I'm Don Ma. President Trump rejecting Iran's offer and issuing a new warning to the regime. What the Central Command could be planning and how the U.S. continues to squeeze Tehran economically. The Supreme Court today weighing whether the Trump administration can end deportation protections for hundreds of thousands of Haitians and Syrian immigrants. What's at stake and how the justices are signaling they might rule. And in another Supreme Court development today, a unanimous ruling released in favor of faith-based pregnancy centers. The justices say they can challenge a New Jersey subpoena in federal court, citing First Amendment concerns. President Trump is reportedly planning to extend the naval blockade on Iranian ports. What the president says about negotiating with the leftover Islamic regime. And turning to media and regulation, the FCC ordering an early review of license renewals for Disney's ABC stations in major cities. The move comes amid an ongoing investigation and a broader dispute involving the Trump administration. Violent storms tearing across the heartland, a tornado flattening parts of North Texas, massive hail smashing through the Mid-East or Midwest, and wildfires still burning in the South. The latest from the storm zone.
This is NTD Newsroom, live from our global headquarters in New York City.
Good afternoon, and thank you for joining us. President Trump rejecting plans Iran's request to lift the naval blockade. He's doubling down on squeezing the regime economically through both the blockade and new sanctions. Joining us now live is NTD's White House correspondent Iris Tao. Iris, good afternoon. What is the latest?
Good afternoon to you as well, Don. So President Trump is now rejecting an Iranian proposal for the U.S. to first lift its naval blockade against Iranian ports while postponing talks about Iran's nuclear ambitions till a later stage. Instead, President Trump told Axios in an interview today that he will keep its naval blockade against Iran in place until Iran comes to agreement about its nuclear program. He also asked that, quote, the blockade is somewhat more effective than the bombing. They're choking like a stuffed pig. Meanwhile, last night during a state dinner at the White House, President Trump also reiterating his vow that he will not let Iran have a nuclear weapon. Watch.
Two of you might know, and we're doing very well. We have militarily defeated that particular opponent, and we're never going to let that opponent ever, Charles agrees with me, even more than I do, we're never going to let that opponent have a nuclear weapon. They know that, and they've known it right now very powerfully.
And Axios is also reporting that Central Command is planning more strikes on Iran to get them to the negotiation table. Meanwhile, this morning, President Trump on Truth Social posting that, quote, Iran can't get their act together. They don't know how to sign a non-nuclear deal. They better get smart soon. And that fresh warning is accompanied by an AI image of him holding a gun with explosions in the background with the words, "No more Mr. Nice Guy." It comes as the U.S. Treasury is also trying to squeeze the Iranian regime economically by announcing in the latest development that has frozen more than $344 million in cryptocurrency tied to the Iranian regime. Of course, that's part of the Trump administration's current efforts to choke off the Iran's regime's economic revenue. Back to you.
And Iris, as well, about the shooting over the weekend, new court filings today are revealing details about the shooter that we didn't know about before. Can you tell us more about this?
Sure. So in a new filing today, the Justice Department included what it calls selfies that a suspect took just less than 30 minutes before he tried to charge the security checkpoint into the barroom where the government says he tries to assassinate President Trump along with other high-ranking Trump administration officials. And in the photos, the Justice Department pointed out that it shows the suspect carrying weapons, including a knife and several accessories like a shoulder holster and wire cutters. Now, Cole Thomas Allen has been charged with attempted assassination of President Donald Trump, as well as transportation of a firearm and ammunition in interstate commerce with intent to commit a felony as well as a discharge of a firearm during a crime of violence. Of course, the Justice Department says it's not ruling out further charges against the suspect. Back to you.
Okay, Iris, thank you. Conservative and liberal Supreme Court justices today appearing divided on whether the court can review the Trump administration's decision to end the temporary protected status program for Syrian and Haitian immigrants.
The provision thus bars judicial review of both the Secretary's ultimate decision whether to designate, extend, or terminate, and of each antecedent step along the way to that determination.
Congress was concerned about the fact that, for example, quote, the conditions under which safe haven may be granted, extended, or terminated do not appear in any regulation. That it appeared as though the executive was exercising its discretion in an unregulated fashion, and so Congress created this statute in order to restrict the executive.
The case centers around whether or not the former Secretary of Homeland Security, Kristi Noem, followed the proper steps before determining that it was appropriate to end the temporary protected status program for Syrian and Haitian immigrants who had been living and working in the U.S. for as long as 16 years. The statute governing this decision states in part that the Secretary shall consult with other agencies to ensure that conditions are safe in those countries. Other provisions, another one is of the statute that prohibits judicial review of the Secretary's final determination. The attorneys for the two groups arguing that the court can review whether or not Noem properly followed those steps. Meanwhile, the Trump administration hammering home that the Secretary's determination is final and not subject to review. Liberal justices vigorously pushed back on the Trump administration's argument. And joining us now to discuss the Supreme Court hearing on the Trump administration's effort to terminate temporary protected status is Darlene Sanchez, reporter for the Epoch Times. Darlene, good afternoon. Good to see you. So one of the main issues here is surrounding the case, how far courts can go to review the Trump administration's decision on which nationals from countries qualify for protection. Can you tell us more about this? Elaborate on this point.
Yes. Well, it's basically in the purview of the Secretary of State. This was under Noem at the point whenever, the administration decided that they wanted to terminate TPS, temporary protected status, for various groups. This case surrounds the Haitian and Syrian people that are living here in the United States under that protection at this point. So what it comes down to is really it's an argument about, since the statute involving TPS says that there is no judicial review, that it has been the argument, the government saying that whatever, the administration decides and determines in this situation, there can be no judicial review. However, those on the other side are saying, well, wait a minute, there's a procedure that's written into this law that you're supposed to go by and follow. And if you don't follow that procedure, then, you haven't actually done your due diligence. They didn't use that particular term, but that's what they're talking about. And therefore, this decision is flawed and it shouldn't be allowed to stand. There should be judicial review. So that's really it in a nutshell.
Okay, so in the hearing today, did you get any sense at all whether the judges were leaning one direction or the other?
Yeah, I thought it was interesting. One of the points that I thought that was brought out during, the oral arguments was, okay, so what happens if, let's say that the plaintiff's, argument that, the procedure wasn't followed, whether it was right or wrong, the Secretary came out and went ahead and published, in the Federal Registry that they are taking away TPS, right? So after 60 days, that decision becomes final and it goes into effect. So the question is then, do you back up a decision and based on procedure alone? And the justices seem to be indicating that they found that that would be very difficult and probably not within, their within the realm of what Congress had wanted with this, statute. So, the plaintiffs said, well, look, we're not arguing about the decision that the Secretary made. We're just arguing about the procedure. But if the decision has already been made, then, and you can't argue about the decision, it's kind of like a circular argument there. And I think that's what some of the justices were getting at. And, that if you allow procedure to stop this decision, then aren't you therefore allowing judicial review? So I thought it was very interesting.
All right, so can you just explain for us what is at stake here? What exactly is temporary protected status? What would be the impacts of the results of this case?
Well, there are more than 1 million people in the United States under TPS. A portion of them, of course, are Syrian and Haitian. And what it would mean is that they would have to go back. They would no longer have temporary protected status. They would have to go back to their countries, their native countries. And a lot of them are arguing, well, look, we've been here 16 years. This is going to harm us. We don't think it's safe. That's the argument. Some of these people have built lives here. So, that, of course, is a big argument on the plaintiff's side. However, the government is saying, look, this was never meant to be forever. This is temporary. The word temporary is in there for a reason. And if the conditions are good enough for you to go back home, then you should. And of course, the Trump administration, it is, built basically, its whole campaign, or one of its major points in the campaign when Trump was running for a second term, was we are going to deport the people who should not be here. And temporary protected status, they believe that was used as a tool to bring in people that probably shouldn't even have been here.
Okay, so Darlene, just one last thing here. You talked a lot about some of the arguments presented today. Could you talk about this one? One of the administration's key arguments is that the courts lack jurisdiction over immigration matters. Just briefly, finally, talk to us more about this. What does this mean?
Right. So in the statute, surrounding TPS, it says there is, no judicial review. And so the argument is that this is the executive branch. They are making the decision concerning foreign policy, which is under the purview of, the executive branch and the president. And, separation of powers, the judicial branch, particularly whenever it has it in the statute that there is no judicial review, should not be allowed to come in and second guess the administration's determination. And that's really the crux of the issue there.
Okay. Well, Darlene, always good to speak with you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And now we take you to the White House live, where President Trump is greeting the 4 Artemis II astronauts in the Oval Office. This is the crew that just completed humanity's first trip around the moon in over 50 years. Let's take a look.
Very, very good. Maybe a little bit of a problem. I don't know, sure. We'll have to try it sometime. Is a president allowed to go up in one of these missions?
We can get working on that, Mr. President.
We have no problem, right?
We can launch more rockets. The opportunity.
We'll have to try it. Congratulations very much. Thanks. And by the way, their families are over here, beautiful families, and they're in the Oval Office, and they walked in, they said, wow, the Oval Office. Everybody likes the Oval Office. So, any questions, please?
Mr. President. Thank you, Mr. President. First of all, it's a great honor to meet all of you. Congratulations, and welcome to the White House. I have had the privilege of interviewing Gene Cernan, the last man to walk on the moon.
Oh, good.
Is that what you would like to do? And Mr. President, do you think that will happen during your second term?
Well, we have a shot at it. I mean, we don't like to say definitely, because then you say, oh, we failed. Because I think we could say we're ahead of schedule. So we have a good shot. We've authorized it. And I think with this team and, with Jared's done such an amazing job at NASA, I think we have a good shot, right? We'll see.
Yes, Mr. President, we have an achievable plan now back to the moon. And we're back in the business of launching moon rockets with frequency. So we just sent Artemis II around the moon. We're going to launch Artemis III in 2027. We'll protect for up for 2 opportunities in 2028 to return astronauts to the surface of the moon.
I like space. I started Space Force, as you very well know. It's been very, very important. And they tried to kill it. And actually, the military would not let the Biden administration kill it. They wanted to kill it. And it's going to turn out to be one of our most important things. I think it'll turn out to be one of the most important things they did. But we got involved with NASA bringing it back. And I was saying when I first looked at some of your facilities, they had grass growing on the runways, right in between the cracks of the asphalt. and but not anymore. It's really strong. And you know what they do, one of the things they do that's so important is for our military offense and defense. And a lot of people say, well, is it worth it? It's really worth it, because what's happened militarily, you see what we're doing militarily, a lot of that comes from space. So it's been pretty great. Good question. Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. President. I have 2 questions for you. First, on the topic of space, do you have an update on the UFO files and when we're going to be seeing those?
Well, I think we're going to be releasing as much as we can in the near future. For some reason, and I guess it's just a reason it's been in the minds of people for a long time, that is such, they want to find out about the UFOs and anything having to do with UFO or related material. And we're going to be releasing a lot of things that we have. And I think some of it's going to be very interesting to people. I've interviewed people, my first term primarily, but I interviewed some pilots, very solid people, and they said they saw things that you wouldn't believe. So you're going to be reading about it, yes.
Sir, you spoke to Vladimir Putin not too long ago. Did you talk to him about
today?
Did you talk to him about progress in the space area, and what else did you talk to him about?
Talk about space? No, I talked about Ukraine, and I talked a little bit about Iran. I talked about a few different subjects, mostly about Ukraine, and we had a very good conversation. I think we're going to come up with a solution relatively quickly, I hope.
What does he want
I
you to
think you'd like to see a solution, I can tell you, and that's good.
What involvement does he want to have in the Iran situation?
He told me he'd like to be involved with the enrichment if he can help us get it. I said I'd much rather have you be involved with ending the war with Ukraine. To me, that would be more important, because we're going to have that. Look, we're not going to let Iran have a nuclear weapon, and we've knocked out their Navy, we've knocked out their Air Force, we've knocked out their anti-aircraft, everything, apparatus, everything they have, their radar. They have very little left, and they have some missiles, a small percentage. They have a small percentage of missile-making facilities. We knocked out about 80% of them. The rest could come very quickly if we don't make a deal. They're not going to have a nuclear weapon. They know it. And just about everybody else does. And so we talked about that a little bit. He doesn't want to see them have a nuclear weapon either. But I had a long talk with President Putin. I suggested a little bit of a ceasefire, and I think he might do that. He might announce something having to do with that. Did he announce it yet?
No, but I was wondering, I was just going to ask you if that...
I asked him about, even if it's a little ceasefire, there's so many people being killed, it's so ridiculous.
Thank you, Mr. President. In light of today's Supreme Court ruling on the Voting Rights Act, do you want Republican states in the South to look at redrawing congressional districts before the midterms?
Tell me, when did the ruling come out? I've been with the astronauts. I've been with contractors, because we're trying to get the ballroom built ahead of schedule. It's right on schedule. It's ahead of schedule now. I want to keep it that way.
The ruling came out today.
And I was also with commissioning some people, but one of, David Warrington's son, I don't know, you know David? Everybody knows David. He's got this incredible son, so he was just sworn in, so we had other things. Tell me about what happened.
Well, some think that the ruling could create more Republican-held congressional seats in the South.
That's good.
Yeah, would you want them to...
That's the kind of ruling I like.
Would you want them to...
When did that happen?
Well, the Supreme Court ruled on it this morning.
Really? Is that right? Tell me about the ruling.
Well, I have a question, Mr. President. On your call with President Putin today, do you think the war in Iran ends first, or the war in Ukraine?
Well, we talked more about the war in Ukraine, but he would like to be of help. I said, before you help me, I want to end your war. So we had a good talk. I've known him a long time. I think he was ready to make a deal a while ago. I think some people made it difficult for him to make a deal, but we talked more about Ukraine.
But which war do you think ends first?
That's an interesting question. Coming from you, that's very interesting. Which war would end first? I don't know. Maybe they're on a similar timetable. I think Ukraine, militarily, they're defeated, okay? You wouldn't know that by reading the fake news, but militarily, look, their Navy. So they had 159 ships. Every ship is right now underwater. Typically, that's pretty good. What do you think, Jared? I mean, it's going to be hard for them to make a naval comeback. Okay, now they have an Air Force every one of their planes has been shot down or has been decimated. They have missiles, about 82% are gone, and they have drones, and most of them are gone. Most of the factories are mostly gone, and we have tremendous anti-drone equipment now, between lasers and that new, very special machine gun that knocks them out of the air like flies. And we use bullets instead of $1 million, missiles to knock out a $30,000 drone. So I would say Jared would tell me that with everything you just heard, typically we're in pretty good shape. And in addition, their economy is crashing. Their, as you know, their money, they call it their money, they don't have a name for it. Their money is valueless. They've got inflation that nobody's ever seen before. Other than that, I think they're doing quite well. If you read the New York Times, you'd say they're doing wonderfully because it's fake news. Or if you watch CNN, I mean, you cover it all the time. You think they're doing well. Do you think they're doing well where they have no Navy, no Air Force, no anti-aircraft apparatus, other than what they may have put there? They may have brought in some light stuff during the ceasefire, and we know exactly where it is, so it'll be knocked out within the first 15 minutes.
You're about to hit the 60-day mark. Just to follow up, Mr. President. Thank you very much, Mr. President. I want to go back to the Supreme Court ruling on the Voting Rights Act. I know you said you haven't seen it in detail. When did it come out just now? No, it came out this morning, but basically very much narrows the Voting Rights Act.
Was it considered a win for
a win for Republicans? Absolutely. But my question...
very good. We can end this news conference. I want to read it.
My question for you, Mr. President, is that some Republican governors have not responded in terms of what they're going to do. I guess early voting, for example, in Louisiana starts... Republican governors.
What about it?
Early voting begins Saturday there, for instance. Should they redraw the map in the next couple of days?
I would. I mean, it depends. I mean, some states don't need to redraw, and some do. I mean, I know what the concept of the rule, I just haven't seen the result. Yeah, I would say generally I would think that they would want to do it. Some are greatly helped, and some, it didn't make much difference. Yeah, I would say they would do that. They have time to do it. Yeah, please.
Thank you, Mr. President. I wanted to ask you, there's a lot of drama on the House floor today. Several bills were stalled, and a rule took 2 hours to pass today, and there's still some tension over the Farm Bill. Do you think that you need to get more involved legislatively on Capitol Hill?
Well, we want the Farm Bill. The Democrats don't. We want security, okay? We need security. We want security. The Democrats don't think we need security. They actually do, but they suffer greatly from Trump derangement syndrome, like at levels that nobody's ever seen. They're sick people. There's something wrong with them. They don't want to pay anybody for security. They don't like ICE. They don't like Border Patrol people. They don't like the people that keep us safe. When they ran this, they let 25 million people into our country, and many of those people were from prisons. They were from mental institutions, drug dealers, murderers, 11,888 murders, half of whom committed more than one murder. They think that was fine. I happen to like law enforcement. They essentially want to defund law enforcement, and I don't think the public's going to let them get away with it. We got it all approved in the great big beautiful bill, and they want to renegotiate. We don't like that.
Mr. President, yesterday, Mr. President, the King's speech that he made to Congress, he spoke strongly, forcefully about the necessity for a strong NATO alliance. He also spoke about the necessity to continue to support Ukraine. Did his speech in any way change your thinking on either of those issues?
Well, you have to understand, my thinking is, I think, exactly correct, but I was very disappointed with the fact that when we called on them to give us a little hand, we didn't need it. I actually did it just to see whether or not they'd be there. When we called on NATO to give us a hand with Ukraine, and in particular the most recent, we asked them to do certain things on Ukraine, and we also wanted them to do things with Iran. And on Ukraine, they're very much involved, but they didn't do things the way we would like to see it. It's been going on for a long time. And on Iran, they weren't there. As you know it better than anybody. They weren't there. The King is fantastic. We spent a lot of time together. We had a lot of talk. We talked about this also. And he loves his country, and he's a great king, and he's a great friend of mine. And I think if he were doing that, if that were up to him, he would have probably helped us with Iran. He would have followed the suggestions we made with respect to Ukraine, because, we have some disagreements on Ukraine, and not having to do with NATO so much as European countries. But no, he's coming back tomorrow. We had an incredible evening last night, and he's leaving tomorrow. He's going to come back and see us before he leaves, and but I think he's a phenomenal representative for his country. I think the people in the United Kingdom should be proud. I loved his speech yesterday. I watched it. I loved the speech last night. I don't know about my speech. I thought my speech was okay too, but I thought he was. I think he's an unbelievable king, and by the way, an unbelievable queen. They are a great couple.
This morning, we were talking about how busy you were this morning. James Comey was in court. He self-surrendered. He's now been charged a second time, this time over a social media post with seashells that said 8647. Do you really think that he was endangering your life or threatening your life with that post?
Well, if anybody knows anything about crime, they know 86. You know what 86? It's a mob term for kill him. You ever see the movies? 86 him. The mobster says to one of his wonderful associates, 86 him. That means kill him. I think of it as a mob term. I don't know. People think of it as something having to do with disappearing, but the mob uses that term to say when they want to kill somebody, they say 86, the son of a gun. I'm trying to keep the language nice and clear. They don't use that term, son of a gun. They use another term. But that's a mob term for kill him. Yeah.
But do you really think your life was in danger? Because that's the argument.
Based on what I'm seeing out there, yeah.
Seashells.
The people like Comey have created tremendous danger, I think, for politicians and others. Comey is a dirty cop. He's a very dirty cop. He cheated on the elections. He tried to help Hillary Clinton, as you know. He dismissed a lot of things that he should have proceeded with. I wasn't involved, but he should have proceeded with. No, he's a dirty cop. He's a crooked man, yeah.
Mr. President, you just described there's been disagreement between the U.S. and Keir Starmer on support for Iran. Did your visit with the king smooth that over or create any more?
My visit with the king really was it was extraordinary. I mean, he's an extraordinary man. He's an extraordinary person. And, yeah, it helps from the standpoint that, when you like the king of a country so much, it probably helps your relationship with the prime minister. But, in that case, the prime minister, I said, do you want to send a little help? He said, no, we'll send it after you win the war. I said, that's not good. That's not good. What do you think of that, Jared? Sending help after we win the war? I don't know. Something that bothers me. I don't want to get you guys involved, but I can imagine what you think.
The United Arab Emirates, the UAE, they pulled out of OPEC.
Yeah,
what do you think about that?
I think it's great. I think it's great. Look, I know him very well, Mohammed, and very smart. And he probably maybe wants to go his own way. That's a good thing. I think ultimately it's a good thing for getting the price of gas down, getting oil down, getting everything down. They have it all. He's a great leader, actually. So, no, I'm okay. They're having some problems in OPEC.
Mr. President, Kevin Warsh passed a hurdle today. The Senate Banking Committee confirmed his nomination. It will go to the Senate floor. He'll be on the Fed in mid-May. Is it your expectation that he can persuade the other Fed governors to lower interest rates? Because they haven't done so recently.
Because it's a good time to lower them. We're the most prime country anywhere in the world. We're right now having investments made in our country at a level that nobody's ever seen. No other country's ever seen it. Tens of billions of dollars are being invested. Factories, auto plants, AI. I mean, not just AI, because AI is new. We're leading China by a lot in AI, as you know. I'm letting them build their own electric plants. They're building them, otherwise you could never do it. It was a concept that I came up with. I'm very proud of it. And by the way, they're building electric plants that people in the utility industry have never seen before. They're saying, man, that's incredible. So they're building these massive buildings that cost billions of dollars, and they're building their own electric plants. So they're not taking from a source or the old grid, an old grid that wouldn't be able to do it. No, we're leading with everything. But In the history of our beautiful world, there's never been a country that has so much money being invested in it as us. And tremendous number of auto plants, by the way. The auto plants are coming out of Canada, Mexico, Japan, South Korea, Germany. They're all coming to the United States. And the reason is I have a very smart tariff policy. We were taken advantage of for years. We were being ripped off by other countries for years. And those days are over. Yeah,
Mr. President, regarding Iran, how long are you prepared to maintain the blockade? Could that go several more months?
Well, the blockade is genius, okay? The blockade has been 100% foolproof. It shows how good our Navy is, I can tell you that. Nobody's going to play games. We have the greatest military in the world, and I built much of it during my first term, and we've been building it since. And the greatest anywhere in the world, nobody even close. And you see that, whether it's Venezuela, and they have a good military in Venezuela, but it was over in one day. It was actually over in about 48 minutes. Iran, the same thing. I mean, militarily, we've wiped them out. They have no military left. It's all the Navy's at the bottom of the sea. The Air Force is never going to fly again. We've got an amazing military. Now they have to cry uncle. That's all they have to do. Just say, we give up. We give up. But their economy is really in trouble. So it's a dead economy.
So will Operation Economic Fury and the blockade get Iran to nuclear talks fast enough, or do you think another wave of strikes will be necessary?
I don't know. It depends. We have talks. We're having talks with them now, and we're not flying anymore with 18-hour flights every time we want to see a piece of paper. We're doing it telephonically, and it's very nice. I make a call, or I have my people make a call, and you know the answer. I always like face-to-face. I consider it better. But when you have to fly 18 hours every time you want to have a meeting, and you know what the meeting's all about, and you know they're going to give you a piece of paper that you don't like before you even leave. It's ridiculous. They've come a long way. The question is whether or not they're going to go far enough. So at this moment, there will never be a deal unless they agree that there will be no nuclear weapons.
Are you happy with President, what are your latest thoughts on Cuba? Are you considering relocating NASA's headquarters out of D.C.? States like Florida, Texas, and Ohio have expressed interest.
You're going to have to say it differently.
Sorry, are you considering relocating NASA's headquarters out of D.C. once the lease is up? States like Texas, Ohio, and Florida have expressed interest.
The best man to tell you that is a man standing right over here. You heard that question with those beautiful ears of yours? He's got great hearing, He's got super hearing.
Trick of the trade, sir.
What's the answer to that?
I think the answer to that is we have 10 amazing centers around the country that all kind of bubble up to contribute to the mission we're able to undertake, like Artemis II. I think in terms of the headquarters, we have a lot of people very interested in our mission. So being here in D.C. gives us the opportunity to kind of interact from all our stakeholders, make sure we make the right decisions for the nation.
Yeah, D.C. is an advantage, I guess, for you. It's got to go around. It's got to see some senators, make sure they keep going, right?
Yes, Mr. President.
Yeah, probably staying around is not so bad. And importantly, Washington, D.C. is now one of the safest cities in the country. When I came here a little more than a year ago, it was a very unsafe city. And now, maybe even more importantly than that, we have the hottest country anywhere in the world. And you helped make it hot. You helped make it hot. When a year and a half ago, and I say it a lot, the King of Saudi Arabia, but others also, the King of Saudi Arabia said, Mr. President, a year and a half ago, we thought you had a dead country. We thought the United States was a dead country, and now you have the hottest country anywhere in the world, and we do. And believe it or not, when everybody in the world was watching that incredible performance by NASA, these incredible people behind me, where they get the bravery, I have no idea. But you're a big part of it. You really are. We have the hottest country in the world. Thank you very much, everybody.
Thank you, bro. Thank you, bro. Thank you, sir. Thank you, bro.
And you were just watching President Trump greeting the astronauts, the 4 astronauts from the Artemis II mission, where the crew flew around the moon, and taking reporter questions, starting off with asking whether the president could get on a spaceship around the moon, and the NASA administrator jokingly saying that they're working on it. Maybe not so much a joke. But also taking questions on the Iran war, saying that the U.S. blockade on Iran is working very well, economic pressure, and another thing that President Trump talked about is the Comey case, saying that the number 86 has been used in mob movies, saying to get rid of a person. Okay, breaking now. The Federal Reserve holding interest rates steady as new data shows the economy growing at a solid pace, but inflation remaining elevated. And moments from now, Jerome Powell, the Fed chair, is set to address reporters in what is expected to be his final press appearance as Fed chair. Let's take a quick listen.
Have remained low. The unemployment rate has been little changed in recent months. Inflation has moved up and is elevated, in part reflecting the recent increase in global energy prices. Today, the FOMC decided to leave our policy rate unchanged. We see the current stance of monetary policy as appropriate to promote progress toward our maximum employment and 2% inflation goals. Developments in the Middle East are contributing to a high level of uncertainty about the economic outlook, and we will remain attentive to risks to both sides of our dual mandate. I'll have more to say about monetary policy after briefly reviewing economic developments. Recent indicators suggest that economic activity has been expanding at a solid pace. Consumer spending has been resilient, and business fixed investment has continued to expand at a brisk pace. In contrast, activity in the housing sector has remained weak. In the labor market, the unemployment rate was 4.3% in March and has changed little in recent months. Job gains have remained low. A good part of the slowing in the pace of the job growth over the past year reflects a decline in the growth of the labor force due to lower immigration and labor force participation, though labor demand has clearly softened as well. Other indicators, including job openings, layoffs, hiring, and nominal wage growth, generally show little change in recent months. Inflation has moved up recently and is elevated relative to our 2% longer-run goal. Estimates based on the Consumer Price Index and other data indicate that total PCE prices rose 3.5% over the 12 months ending in March, boosted by the significant rise in global oil prices that has resulted from the conflict in the Middle East. Excluding the volatile food and energy categories, core PCE prices rose 3.2% over the 12 months ending in March. This relatively high rate largely reflects the effects of tariffs on prices in the goods sector. Near-term measures of inflation expectations have risen this year, likely because of the substantial rise in oil prices. Most measures of longer-term expectations remain consistent with our 2% inflation goal. Our monetary policy actions are guided by our dual mandate to promote maximum employment and stable prices for the American people. At today's meeting, the committee decided to maintain the target range for the federal funds rate at 3.5% to 3.75%. The economic outlook remains highly uncertain, and the conflict in the Middle East has added to this uncertainty. In the near term, higher energy prices will push up overall inflation. Beyond that, the scope and duration of potential effects on the economy remain unclear, as does the future course of the conflict itself. We will continue to monitor the risks to both sides of our dual mandate. We are well positioned to determine the extent and timing of additional adjustments to our policy rate based on the incoming data, the evolving outlook, and the balance of risks. Monetary policy is not on a preset course, and we will make our decisions on a meeting-by-meeting basis. This is my last press conference as chair, and I will close with a few thoughts. First, I want to congratulate Kevin Warsh on his advancement out of the Senate Banking Committee this morning. This is an important step forward, and I wish him well as that process continues. The Federal Reserve exists for one fundamental purpose: to foster the economic conditions in which American families and businesses can thrive. Stable prices, a strong job market, and a financial system they can depend on. Every decision we make, whether about interest rates or regulatory and supervisory matters or other issues, is made in service of that purpose. Our decisions reflect the collective judgment of the Board of Governors and the Federal Open Market Committee, colleagues who demonstrate analytical rigor, principled judgment, and a genuine commitment to the public interest. Our collaborative and deliberative process has long reflected a shared commitment to finding common ground in service to our mission. This institution is resilient, capable, and staffed by professionals of extraordinary talent and exceptional dedication. It has been a privilege to serve alongside so many great public servants at the Board of Governors and around the Federal Reserve System. The Fed's work is only as effective as the public's understanding of it, and you, the press, are essential to keeping the public informed about what we do and why. The people we serve benefit from your careful reporting. I welcomed the announcement last Friday by the U.S. Attorney for the District of Columbia that she had closed the criminal investigation. She also noted, however, that she would not hesitate to restart the investigation. Over the weekend, the Department of Justice provided assurances that they will not reopen the investigation unless there's a criminal referral from the Fed's Inspector General. And, absent such a referral, if they do appeal the recent court decision, they would not seek, as part of that appeal, to restart the investigation or send new subpoenas. I've said that I will not leave the board until this investigation is well and truly over with transparency and finality, and I stand by that. I'm encouraged by recent developments, and I'm watching the remaining steps in this process carefully. My decisions on these matters will continue to be guided entirely by what I believe is in the best interest of the institution and the people we serve. After my term as chair ends on May 15, I will continue to serve as a governor for a period of time to be determined. I plan to keep a low profile as a governor. There's only ever one chair of the Federal Reserve Board. When Kevin Warsh is confirmed and sworn in, he will be that chair. Once sworn in as board chair, his new colleagues will elect him to chair the FOMC as well. As I regularly point out from this podium, our success in delivering our goals matters for all Americans. I'm confident that the Fed will continue to do its work with objectivity, integrity, and a deep commitment to serve the American people. Thank you, and I look forward to your questions.
And you were just watching the Fed Chair Jerome Powell announcing that the Federal Reserve has made a decision to hold rates steady at 3.5 to 3.75%. That's the Federal Reserve benchmark interest rate. And this is his last appearance as chair in a press conference before his term ends on May 15th. He's congratulating Kevin Warsh as the incoming Fed chair and congratulating him in his advancements in the process of being confirmed, and saying that the Federal Reserve remains data dependent and is making decisions on a meeting by meeting basis. All right, taking a break. Rising tensions with Iran as President Trump reportedly considers extending the naval blockade. What it could mean for nuclear talks and shipping in the region. We have more news after this. Stay with us.
Tired of struggling with that heavy leaf blower? Introducing the Bullseye Power Blower. It delivers a massive blowing force, and yet it's so compact and lightweight. Just lock and load the rechargeable battery for long-lasting runtime. The secret is the compact turbocharged motor with jet burst technology that blasts out 21,000 RPMs of airflow. Watch this. The sheer force propels this woman across the pool. Look, use Bullseye to blow up a huge jump house. Now that's power. Even blows snow right off your vehicle in no time. Turbo clean your porch in a flash or tidy up your dirty garage floor in seconds. Get it today for just $99.99. But wait, act now and get a $20 discount. So it's only $79.99. Plus, you'll get the adjustable extension tube. Yours free. And it all comes with free shipping. Order now.
Call 1-800-209-2313 or go to bullseyeblower.com. That's 1-800-209-2313 or order online at bullseyeblower.com. Order now.
How Covenant House changed my life.
Call or go online now and give just $19 a month. We'll send you this comforting blanket as a reminder of the difference you're making in a young person's life. Call or go online now to safeplacetosleep.org.
A major ruling from the Supreme Court today. Justices ruled in favor of faith-based pregnancy centers. In a unanimous decision, the justices say the pregnancy centers can sue New Jersey in federal court. The case involves a subpoena for their records, which the justices say may violate the First Amendment right of free association. New Jersey Attorney General Matthew Platkin was one of 16 attorneys general who has criticized pro-life pregnancy centers. In 2023, Platkin issued a subpoena to First Choice Women's Resource Centers. He alleged false advertising to donors and consumers. He said the group's donor website highlighted its pro-life stance, while client sites were less explicit. First Choice denied wrongdoing, saying it does not provide or refer for abortions, which is clearly stated on its website. Lower courts blocked the federal case, saying it must first go through state court. First Choice called this a catch-22. It cited legal rules that could prevent the case from being heard again. In another ruling today, the Supreme Court limiting race-based redistricting in the Louisiana case. In a 6-3 decision, the court says race cannot be used to draw electoral district boundaries. The case focused on whether a lower court order to create a second black majority congressional district in Louisiana was constitutional. A federal district judge had ordered the state to create the second district to comply with the anti-discrimination provisions of the Federal Voting Rights Act. A group of non-black voters sued the map, arguing it discriminated against non-minorities. The ruling was authored by Justice Samuel Alito and joined by his 5 fellow conservative justices. Alito said Section 2 must enforce the Constitution's ban on intentional racial discrimination under the 15th Amendment. Now to the redistricting battle in Virginia, where the state Supreme Court has denied a request to immediately overturn a lower court ruling that blocks certification of the referendum results. The decision means the referendum outcome cannot be certified while court proceedings continue. A county judge previously ruled the measure invalid, saying the process violated Virginia's constitution. If certified, the new congressional map would shift 10 of the state's 11 districts in favor of Democrats. That's compared with the current split of 6 Democratic and 5 Republican districts. Virginia Attorney General Jay Jones asked the court to allow certification to proceed while the case moves forward. Attorneys for Republican groups argue the measure was improperly placed on the ballot and did not meet timing requirements under the state constitution. Democrats defended the process, saying it complied with legal standards and should stand. The Florida House this morning approved the governor's proposed congressional map in an 83-28 vote. If signed into law, it could shift 4 seats currently held by Democrats into Republican-leaning territory, changing the state's delegation from a 20-8 Republican advantage to 24-4. The map now heads to the state Senate, which is expected to vote on it this afternoon. A special passport for America's 250th birthday. The State Department planning a limited release featuring President Trump. More news after this break. Stay tuned.
A performance that truly matters for each and every one of us. This is what you've been waiting for. See it at least once in your lifetime. Shen Yun. Get tickets now at shenyun.com.
Have you heard what's happening at Mathis Home? Our spring style event is going on now with hundreds of options for your new dining room. This 52-inch table is a great deal. It's just $4.99 in your choice of finishes. Mix and match chairs to complete the look that's just right for you. You can also get it with a marble top or in a larger size for extra seating. We have your style in stock now with fast, free delivery. Get your new dining room and save at your furniture superstore, Mathis Home.
I'm Amy Grant, and I want to talk to you from my heart about the heart. I would have been the last person on the list to say this woman has a problem with her heart. So no, there was nothing about my life that said, you have a ticking time bomb in your chest. But I did. I wound up in the office of a cardiologist because I was there with my husband. And at the tail end of that, The cardiologist looked at me and said, "I want to see you." No one was more surprised than I was to learn I was living with a rare heart condition. He said, "Amy, this condition, you'll be fine, and then catastrophic." A few months later, I had open heart surgery that saved my life. And I owe it to the research and life-saving medical breakthroughs developed by the American Heart Association. That's why I'm asking you to join me and become a monthly donor to the American Heart Association. Please call now or go to helpheart.org. For only $19 a month, just 63 cents a day, you can help fund the next medical breakthrough, get the next person trained in CPR, and get the next hospital certified in high-quality cardiovascular care. If this could happen to me, it could happen to anybody. Heart disease is America's #1 killer, but your support can save your life or the life of someone you love. Give $19 a month with your credit card and we'll send you this special t-shirt you can wear to show you're part of a community of monthly donors working to help save more lives like mine. I'm grateful for the American Heart Association. Their research gave me more time to do the things I love with the people I love. So listen to your heart. I'm here today because I did. Please call the number on your screen or go to helpheart.org now to become a monthly donor and help save even more lives. Thank you.
Nick Rayner is in court today for a pre-trial hearing. The son of Hollywood actor and filmmaker Rob Rayner is charged with killing both of his parents. Nick Rayner has pleaded not guilty to 2 counts of first-degree murder. The 32-year-old was arrested in December after police found Rob Rayner and his wife Michelle stabbed to death in their home in the upscale Brentwood neighborhood of Los Angeles. In the years before his arrest, Nick Rayner spoke publicly about his struggles with substance abuse and periods of homelessness that occurred when he refused to enter rehab. Nick Rayner has been held without bail since his arrest. A judge will decide whether or not the case will go to trial after today's hearing. Cleanup is underway in North Texas after violent weather hammered broad swaths of the U.S. heartland. Here's an update.
Currently, the Palapena County judge and the Parker County judge are both working on declaring the area a disaster.
Authorities in Mineral Wells, Texas, addressing the damage left by a tornado that flattened parts of the town.
Y'all pray for everybody in Mineral Wells, Texas, guys. It's crazy out here right now.
Several people were injured, 2 of them hospitalized when the tornado ripped through the town about 80 miles west of Dallas Tuesday, the 6th day of a severe storm outbreak that has terrorized the Midwest and continues to wreak havoc in the South. The violent storms Tuesday also came with hail. Hailstones up to tennis ball and baseball size pummeled Springfield, Missouri, damaging vehicles and knocking down power poles.
I gotta get out of here.
A storm chaser in Missouri reacting as the icy chunks rained down on his car, cracking his windshield. In neighboring Illinois, authorities are assessing damage from a tornado Monday that ripped through several towns in Clinton County, including Germantown. The storm damaged homes, toppled trees and power lines, and blocked roads. Meanwhile, wildfires continue to burn in parts of the South, including South Florida, where a massive blaze is burning in Everglades National Park. As of Tuesday night, it had expanded to more than 5,000 acres.
The State Department says it's preparing a limited release of commemorative U.S. passports marking the nation's 250th birthday. The design will include a picture of President Trump. Officials say he would be the first living president featured in a U.S. travel document. The concept has been under consideration for months and was approved late Monday. It includes a rendering of President Trump's image. Between 25,000 and 30,000 of the commemorative passports will be issued. They will be available at the Washington, D.C. passport office ahead of July 4th. The commemorative version will be the default there. Applicants can still request a standard passport online outside Washington. A major rollback on gun policy. The Justice Department is set to unveil new rules aimed at protecting Second Amendment rights, reversing several Biden-era measures. More news after this break. Don't go away.
Hate is loud. It gets clicks. It gets attention. Hate, however, is actually quite small. But love, Love is the majority, filling up something far more important than any feed. Love fills our hearts, our lives, our every day, with understanding, empathy, and compassion, leaving hate to become what it truly is, a whisper.
Today's seniors are enjoying life more than ever before, and part of that comes from the independence of driving.
However, car insurance for older drivers becomes more expensive the older we get.
Just because I'm a senior, and maybe you are too, do we really have to pay outrageously high insurance rates? Well, the answer is no, we don't.
When was the last time you checked to make sure you're paying the lowest available rate? Well, maybe it's time to give your car insurance a tune-up, just to make sure your rates are running properly.
You change your oil, you change your tires, well, maybe it's time to change your car's insurance company.
Are you paying too much for your auto insurance? If so, you're just throwing your money away.
So the only way to really know if you're paying too much is to call the number on your screen.
1-800-952-5196. 1-800-952-5196.
You'll speak with a licensed insurance agent. They may have an insurance plan that could lower your yearly premiums by hundreds of dollars.
Seniors can save money on their car insurance.
So call right now and find out just how much money you might be able to save.
Come on, call now.
You may be able to save a lot of money, maybe hundreds of dollars a year. Just call the number on your screen and speak with a licensed insurance agent.
Yes, it is possible for seniors to save on car insurance. You could lower your premiums by hundreds of dollars a year.
As a responsible driver, you always check your gauges, right? And you check for other cars and pedestrians. You check your oil and you check your mirrors.
Well, now is the time to check on your auto insurance rates. You need to make sure that you're not paying more than you need to. Call the number on your screen right now.
1-800-952-5196. 1-800-952-5196.
There are real consequences to controlled media. And NTD's founders know them firsthand. Our freedom of thought is the price. This is the lesson that guides us in everything we do.
So there's the tear gas there.
We know the value of a free society. And we take seriously the responsibility to preserve it. We are NTD.
Welcome to NTD Newsroom. I'm Don Ma. President Trump urging Iran to reach a deal to end the conflict with the U.S. How the administration is putting pressure, economic pressure, on the regime, and what the U.S. military may be planning to break during the negotiation deadlock. Iran running out of room for its oil. U.S. officials say Tehran is now using retired ships as floating storage as American sanctions begin to bite. A chilling selfie taken just minutes before the alleged assassination attempt targeting President Trump. Prosecutors say the suspect, armed with guns and knives, tried to breach security at the White House Correspondents' Dinner. A major rollback on gun policy. The Justice Department is set to unveil new rules aimed at protecting Second Amendment rights, reversing several Biden-era measures. And in another Supreme Court development today, a unanimous ruling released in favor of faith-based pregnancy centers. The justices say they can challenge a New Jersey subpoena in federal court, citing First Amendment concerns. Flying over traffic, electric air taxis take to the skies in New York City, what it could mean for your commute.
This is NTD Newsroom, live from our global headquarters in New York City.
Thank you for joining us. President Trump issuing a new warning to Iran, urging the regime to make a deal. It comes as the president refuses to lift the U.S.'s naval blockade on Iranian ports. We now go live to NTD's White House correspondent Mari Otsu at the North Lawn. Mari, good afternoon. What is the latest from the president on Iran?
Hey, Don, good afternoon to you. That's right, and this is coming as President Trump is reiterating, doubling down, that the Iranian regime can never have a nuclear weapon. And he's saying that the U.S. is currently in telephone talks with the Iranian regime and that a new potential wave of strikes on Iran depends on how those talks go. Now, this comes as the president today took to Truth Social to say, quote, Iran can't get their act together. They don't know how to sign a non-nuclear deal. They better get smart soon. And, Don, that post coming along with an edited image of President Trump holding a machine gun with explosions in the background. Here's the president in the Oval just moments ago. Take a look.
Look, we're not going to let Iran have a nuclear weapon. And we've knocked out their Navy, we've knocked out their Air Force, we've knocked out their anti-aircraft, everything, apparatus, everything they have, their radar. They have very little left. And they have some missiles, a small percentage. They have a small percentage of missile-making facilities. We knocked out about 80% of them. The rest could come very quickly if we don't make a deal. They're not going to have a nuclear weapon. They know it, and just about everybody else does.
And, Don, President Trump is also calling the U.S.'s blockade on Iranian ports in the Hormuz Strait, quote, 100% foolproof and genius. This is coming a day after President Trump said on Truth Social, quote, Iran has just informed us that they are in a, quote, state of collapse. They want us to open the Hormuz Strait as soon as possible as they try to figure out their leadership situation, which I believe they will be able to do. The president today saying that he's rejecting that request from the Iranian regime, and he's going to keep Iran under that naval blockade until the regime agrees to a deal that addresses their nuclear program. He also says Iran's economy is crashing, citing both high inflation and a meaningless, valueless currency there. And, Don, that blockade extension is coming as experts estimate that Iran has at most 12 to 22 days left of oil storage, as Tehran has nowhere to put their crude under this blockade of the U.S.'s.
So, Mari, can we talk about the White House Correspondents' Dinner shooting? The Department of Justice today filing court papers requesting the suspect remain in jail pending trial. What is the latest on that?
Sure. So some key updates from that new court file today. The Department of Justice saying that that suspect, Cole Allen, could face life in prison without parole if he was convicted. The Department of Justice is also releasing a previously unseen photo of the suspect at the Washington Hilton. It's a mirror selfie that you see there in his hotel room where you can see his weapons. The Department of Justice also asking for that suspect, Allen, to remain detained pending trial, saying, quote, the defendant's actions were premeditated, violent, and calculated to cause death. Don, back to you.
Okay, Mari, thank you. President Trump keeps the naval blockade on Iranian ports as the Islamic regime doesn't want to give up its nuclear aspirations. NTD's international correspondent Arian Pasdar has the latest on the negotiations.
New footage on Wednesday shows the Strait of Hormuz remains largely empty. The U.S. is blocking ships with ties to Iran after the Islamic regime laid mines trying to prohibit anyone from passing the strait.
Again, ineffective.
On Wednesday, President Trump posted, Iran can't get their act together. They don't know how to sign a non-nuclear deal. They better get smart soon. Due to the American blockade on Iranian ports, the regime can't export its oil anymore, while its storage sites are at limit. The Department of War on Wednesday saying Tehran is using retired ships to keep loading oil as its storage space runs out, saying this shows that the American blockade is working. If Iran can't store its oil, it'll have to shut the oil wells, which can cause permanent damage to the oil fields. And the U.S. Central Command releasing a video of American forces boarding yet another vessel with ties to Iran, CENTCOM says the commercial ship is suspected of attempting to transit to Iran in violation of the U.S. blockade. So far, U.S. forces have redirected 39 vessels near the Strait of Hormuz. CENTCOM also reports that 20 vessels are now anchored at a port in southern Iran. Before the American blockade, only 5 commercial ships were anchored there. Arian Pastar, NTD News.
The Treasury has frozen $344 million in cryptocurrency linked to Iran. The move is part of the Trump administration's effort to squeeze the Iranian regime's finances. The Treasury has taken several steps to cut revenue for Iran, part of a maximum pressure campaign dubbed Operation Economic Fury. In a post on X, Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent said the effort will, quote, continue to systematically degrade Iran's ability to generate, move, and repatriate funds. Other targets of Operation Economic Fury include Iran's international shadow banking system, its fleet of sanction-evading oil tankers, and weapons procurement networks. Bessent said the effort is draining funds for Tehran's terrorist proxies in the region, while targeting so-called Chinese teapot refineries that support Iran's oil trade. Acting Attorney General Todd Blanche is speaking right now as the Justice Department moves to roll back several Biden-era gun policies. Let's listen in.
So from patrol officer to federal agent to special agent in charge, Rob has committed his entire life to serving the public and protecting communities nationwide. I know this personally. He's a dedicated father to Robbie and Gianna, a husband to Leah. He loves to fish, and he loves Florida. So, congratulations.
All right, we're going to take a quick commercial break, and then we'll come back to what Todd Blanche is saying in just a moment. But the Supreme Court today is reviewing a case that could allow the Trump administration to send thousands of immigrants back to their home countries. We'll talk about it more after this break. Stay tuned.
Sweetie, are you ready to go?
In a sec!
You think Granny will like this?
Of course she will.
Let's go.
Hello! Hi! So good to see you. Come in.
Mom, thank you for everything.
Oh my goodness. Wow, that is so beautiful. I love the color. Oh my gosh, the leather. Thank you so much.
Mom, thank you for everything.
Oh, wow. It's like matches.
It's adorable.
I'm Amy Grant, and I want to talk to you from my heart about the heart. I would have been the last person on the list to say this woman has a problem with her heart. So no, there was nothing about my life that said you have a ticking time bomb in your chest. But I did. I wound up in the office of a cardiologist because I was there with my husband. And at the tail end of that, the cardiologist looked at me and said, "I want to see you." No one was more surprised than I was to learn I was living with a rare heart condition. He said, "Amy, this condition, you'll be fine, and then catastrophic." A few months later, I had open heart surgery that saved my life. And I owe it to the research and life-saving medical breakthroughs developed by the American Heart Association. That's why I'm asking you to join me and become a monthly donor to the American Heart Association. Please call now or go to helpheart.org. For only $19 a month, just 63 cents a day, you can help fund the next medical breakthrough, get the next person trained in CPR, and get the next hospital certified in high-quality cardiovascular care. If this could happen to me, it could happen to anybody. Heart disease is America's #1 killer, but your support can save your life or the life of someone you love. Give $19 a month with your credit card, and we'll send you this special t-shirt you can wear to show you're part of a community of monthly donors working to help save more lives like mine. I'm grateful for the American Heart Association. Their research gave me more time to do the things I love with the people I love. So listen to your heart. I'm here today because I did. Please call the number on your screen or go to helpheart.org now to become a monthly donor and help save even more lives. Thank you.
Military leaders are under the spotlight today. Secretary of War Pete Hegseth and Chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff General Dan Kane are testifying before the House Armed Services Committee. It's their first time taking questions from lawmakers since the Iran war began 2 months ago. Here's a clip of the hearing. Take a listen.
So what is the plan to actually turn all of this lethal kinetic action into an improvement in the nuclear situation? Because we haven't gotten there yet. Play it out for us. How does that happen? How does it actually lead to that result?
Now, President Trump has been clear-eyed, from the killing of Qasem Soleimani to the pulling out of the Iran deal to Midnight Hammer and now to this effort, to recognize that you have to stare down this kind of enemy who's hell-bent on getting a nuclear weapon and get them to a point where they're at the table.
Secretary Hegseth also remarking on military recruitment under the Trump administration.
I think something that obviously the media doesn't want to cover and doesn't want to talk about is the historic record-breaking surge in recruiting in our ranks. 30-year record in recruiting of Americans wanting to join our joint force, wanting to put the uniform on. We're meeting recruiting goals halfway through the year. We couldn't meet our recruiting goals under the previous administration. Under Joe Biden, Americans didn't want to join the military. We couldn't get it. Now we have to turn people away and push them to the next fiscal year.
Also during the hearing, the Pentagon saying the U.S. has spent about $25 billion on the Iran war so far. War Department officials Jules Hurst provided the estimate in response to a question by Congressman Adam Smith. He said most of the spending has gone toward munitions, adding that some funds also cover operations, maintenance, and equipment replacement. Meanwhile, conservative and liberal Supreme Court justices today appearing divided on whether the court can review the Trump administration's decision to end the temporary protected status program for Syrian and Haitian immigrants.
The provision thus bars judicial review of both the Secretary's ultimate decision whether to designate, extend, or terminate, and of each antecedent step along the way to that determination.
Congress was concerned about the fact that, for example, quote, the conditions under which safe haven may be granted, extended, or terminated do not appear in any regulation. That it appeared as though the executive was exercising its discretion in an unregulated fashion, and so Congress created this statute in order to restrict the executive.
The case centers around whether or not the former Secretary of Homeland Security, Kristi Noem, followed the proper steps before determining that it was appropriate to end the temporary protected status program for Syrian and Haitian immigrants who had been living and working in the U.S. for as long as 16 years. The statute governing this decision states in part that the Secretary shall consult with other agencies to ensure that conditions are safe in those countries. Another provision of the statute prohibits judicial review of the Secretary's final determination. The attorneys for the two groups arguing that the court can review whether or not Noem properly followed those steps. Meanwhile, the Trump administration hammering home that the Secretary's determination is final and not subject to review. Liberal justices vigorously pushed back on the Trump administration's argument. Acting Attorney General Todd Blanche is speaking right now as the Justice Department moves to roll back several Biden-era gun control policies. Let's listen in.
While it would appear that we have impeccable timing, it's actually not true. When we tried to predict what the Senate was going to do a couple weeks ago, we anticipated that Rob would be confirmed a couple days ago, which would have allowed us to actually have a commission signed and to swear Rob in today, which we're not able to do because, like I said, his vote was literally just confirmed 2 minutes ago. So once again, I don't know what's happening in Washington, which is fine. A little bit about Rob, in case you don't know. He began his law enforcement career with the New York City Police Department in 1992, starting in the Housing Bureau in Harlem. He moved around. He was promoted to detective in the Organized Crime Bureau's gang division, later continued his public service with the City of Plantation Police Department in Broward County, Florida, serving in patrol operations on the SWAT team. And then in 2005, so over 20 years ago, Rob joined ATF as a special agent in the Baltimore Field Division, where he was assigned to the Regional Area Gang Enforcement Task Force combating transnational organized crime. He later served as a special agent in the Tampa Field Division, investigating violent crimes involving firearms and explosives, and continuing working his way up through the ATF ranks over the 2 decades. Eventually, he was promoted to SES at ATF, and he was a special agent in charge of the Baltimore Field Division, where he oversaw operations across Maryland and Delaware. Subsequently, he was a special agent in charge in Miami, where he oversaw 21 offices throughout southern Florida, Puerto Rico, and the U.S. Virgin Islands. After that, Rob returned to ATF headquarters as the Deputy Assistant Director for Field Operations. He was then promoted again to Executive Assistant Director of Operations, and then just over 1 year ago today, on April 10th, 2025, Rob was named the Deputy Director of ATF, a role that he has served in through today, and right now he's in that middle spot where he is the confirmed Director of ATF, but commission not signed. So I think still technically Deputy Director, but we're fine. So from patrol officer to federal agent to special agent in charge, Rob has committed his entire life to serving the public and protecting communities nationwide. I know this personally. He's a dedicated father to Robbie and Gianna, a husband to Leah. He loves to fish, and he loves Florida. So congratulations, Rob. It's great. I also want to take a moment to thank Secretary Dan Driscoll, who has been serving for over a year as the acting director of the ATF, and he's also the Secretary of the Army, as most of you all know, and that job is a full-time job. But I can tell you from my role as the Deputy Attorney General, and I know I speak for Rob as well, that Dan was a committed supporter and leader at the ATF. He has done everything within his power to do his job over the past year at the ATF, and supported its mission, supported the 1811s that work keeping us safe every day. And so a really big thanks to Secretary Driscoll for everything that he did over the past year, and we're now happily able to tell him that within the next couple days he'll be able to go back to just being the Secretary of the Army. It is fitting, in my mind, that the first action Rob is going to take today in his new role is to sign the most comprehensive regulatory reform package in the history of ATF. I want to thank President Donald Trump for putting us on this path on January 20th of last year. His leadership made this moment possible. His executive order directing a full review of ATF regulations set the tone, clear, direct, and focused on the Constitution, and I want to thank him for his leadership. It's been over a year, but we're ready to get it rolling. I also want to thank ATF General Counsel Rob Leiter, who's here with us today as well. He has poured his heart and soul into this rewrite, but also his brains. I mean, he's a brilliant attorney. He knows the Second Amendment better than probably most people in this country, and he has worked tirelessly for over a year getting to us to where we are today. And so thank you, Rob, very much for your commitment to the rule of law and commitment to what we're doing today. So what are we doing? We're repealing rules that went beyond what the law allows. We are cutting unnecessary red tape, and we are replacing confusion with clear, straightforward language so that everyday Americans don't need a law degree just to understand their rights. And this did not happen in a vacuum. We listened to industry leaders, many of whom are in this room behind me, to legal experts, and most importantly, to law-abiding gun owners across this country. People who follow the rules but have been forced to navigate a system that often didn't make sense. The package that we're putting forward today and over the coming days reflects all of those voices. It includes 34 proposed rules, more than ATF has issued in the last 15 years combined. It reflects months of work since the beginning of this administration, and I want to be candid right now about why this is necessary. For too long, regulations were written without any real understanding of how firearms businesses operate, how lawful gun owners actually handle their firearms, or what truly improves public safety. Nothing we are doing today weakens law enforcement. We are not taking tools away from the people, the men and women who go after violent criminals. This administration, as it always has, remains fully committed to targeting those who break the law: gang members, repeat offenders, traffickers, and cartels. We will, as we always have done, continue to follow the evidence, continue to aggressively prosecute violent crime. If anything, what we're doing today will actually help law enforcement, because clearer rules mean better compliance, and better compliance means better enforcement. At the same time, it means fewer traps for law-abiding citizens who are just trying to do the right thing. This package also brings into line ATF regulations with the law and with recent Supreme Court precedent. It reduces unnecessary burdens on lawful gun owners and licensed businesses. It eliminates ambiguity, and it helps prevent the kind of confusion that in the past, and not that distant past, led to inconsistent and sometimes unfair enforcement. I'm going to let Rob lay out the specifics of what we're doing in a moment, but let me reiterate that the Second Amendment will never be treated as a second-class right in the Trump administration. President Trump has been clear on this from day one. The Second Amendment is not negotiable. It is part of the foundation of this great country. And under his leadership, this administration, this Justice Department is acting on that belief. I want to make sure folks understand that the work that we're talking about today is not finished today. We're continuing to review every regulation, especially those from the previous administration, and we'll keep putting forward additional proposals as that review continues. For example, ATF is studying right now to determine which rifles are generally recognized as particularly suitable for sporting purposes. That's going to be an ongoing effort over the next several months, and we're going to see that through. But okay, so let's get what we're here to do. I'm going to close by saying that, and I hope folks in this room know that this is absolutely true. Rob is exactly the right person to lead ATF at this moment. First, he owns more guns than I think pretty much anyone I know. He's one heck of a shot. I've seen him at the range. I've shot with him at the range. He's a lot better than me. But more importantly, he understands this work inside and out. He understands the mission, and he understands the importance of getting it right. So welcome, please, to the microphone, the newly confirmed director of the ATF, Rob Cicada.
And now that was the Justice Department moving to roll back Biden-era gun control policies. And former FBI Director James Comey made his first court appearance today in a criminal case. He's being charged with threatening to kill or harm President Trump. NTD's Daniel Monahan has more on the indictment and a response from Comey.
A grand jury sitting in the Eastern District of North Carolina returned an indictment against former FBI Director James Comey on 2 counts.
Threatening the life of the President of the United States will never be tolerated by the Department of Justice.
Acting Attorney General Todd Blanche says the DOJ has charged dozens of cases involving threats against all sorts of individuals over the past year, saying every single case is taken seriously.
While this case is unique and this indictment stands out because of the name of the defendant, His alleged conduct is the same kind of conduct that we will never tolerate and that we will always investigate and regularly prosecute.
Comey has been charged with one count of making threats against the president for a social media post he made in 2025 that was interpreted as a call for violence against President Trump. The post showed the numbers 8647 written in seashells on sand. To 86 is to get rid of, discard, or remove, the phrase often being used as a euphemism for killing someone. Administration officials and other allies of President Trump say Comey's post was a call for violence against Trump, the 47th president. The charge carries penalties ranging from a fine to 5 years in federal prison. Comey was also charged with a count related to threatening criminal conduct across state lines through online or other interstate communications, which carries the same penalties. Comey has maintained that he is innocent of any intentional wrongdoing in the case.
Nothing has changed with me. I'm still innocent. I'm still not afraid. And I still believe in the independent federal judiciary.
Comey deleted the post last year after receiving backlash, saying he did not know that a violent meaning was associated with the phrase. He was interviewed by the Secret Service in May 2025 about the incident. President Trump, in a May 2025 interview, rejected Comey's claims that he did not know the post could be interpreted as having a violent meaning, accusing Comey of knowing exactly what that meant.
James Comey allegedly threatened the life of the President of the United States. And as you all now know, shortly after posting that threat, he deleted that threat and then issued an apology. All of that information was presented to the grand jury, and Mr. Comey will have his day in court.
In order to bring and maintain a conviction under the two federal laws, the DOJ will need to prove both that Comey's statements were truly threatening and that Comey subjectively knew them to be so.
And how do you prove intent in any case? You prove intent with witnesses, with documents, with the defendant himself to the extent it's appropriate, and that's how we'll improve intent in this case.
James Comey was FBI director when President Trump took office in 2017. He was appointed by former President Barack Obama. Daniel Monahan, NTD News.
The Federal Communications Commission has ordered an early review of license renewals for Disney's ABC television stations. The order is part of the FCC's ongoing investigation into the company's compliance with FCC rules and comes amid President Trump's latest dispute with late-night host Jimmy Kimmel. Disney's ABC affiliate was directed to file license renewals for 8 licensed TV stations by May 28th. Those include major markets such as Los Angeles, San Francisco, Chicago, New York, Houston, and Philadelphia. The order speeds up renewals that otherwise would not have been required for another 2 to 5 years and could result in the stations losing the ability to broadcast over the air. A Disney spokesperson says the company has received the order and is confident they have met all license requirements. A major ruling from the Supreme Court today. Justices ruled in favor of faith-based pregnancy centers. In a unanimous decision, the justices say the pregnancy centers can sue New Jersey in federal court. The case involves a subpoena for their records, which the justices say may violate the First Amendment right of free association. New Jersey Attorney General Matthew Platkin was one of 16 attorneys general who has criticized pro-life pregnancy centers. In 2023, Platkin issued a subpoena to First Choice Women's Resource Centers. He alleged false advertising to donors and consumers. He said the group's donor website highlighted its pro-life stance, while client sites were less explicit. First Choice denied wrongdoing, saying it does not provide or refer for abortions, which is clearly stated on its website. Lower courts blocked the federal case, saying it must first go through state court. First Choice called this a catch-22. It cited legal rules that could prevent the case from being heard again. In another ruling today, the Supreme Court limiting race-based redistricting in the Louisiana case. In a 6-3 decision, the court says race cannot be used to draw electoral district boundaries. The case focused on whether a lower court order to create a second black majority congressional district in Louisiana was constitutional. A federal district judge had ordered the state to create the second district to comply with the anti-discrimination provisions of the Federal Voting Rights Act. A group of non-black voters sued the map, arguing it discriminated against non-minorities. The ruling was authored by Justice Samuel Alito and joined by his 5 fellow conservative justices. Alito said Section 2 must enforce the Constitution's ban on intentional racial discrimination under the 15th Amendment. Now to the redistricting battle in Virginia, where the state Supreme Court has denied a request to immediately overturn a lower court ruling that blocks certification of the referendum results. The decision means the referendum outcome cannot be certified while court proceedings continue. A county judge previously ruled the measure invalid, saying the process violated Virginia's constitution. If certified, the new congressional map would shift 10 of the state's 11 districts in favor of Democrats. That's compared with the current split of 6 Democratic and 5 Republican districts. Virginia Attorney General Jay Jones asked the court to allow certification to proceed while the case moves forward. Attorneys for Republican groups argue the measure was improperly placed on the ballot and did not meet timing requirements under the state constitution. Democrats defended the process, saying it complied with legal standards and should stand. The Florida House this morning approved the governor's proposed congressional map in an 83-28 vote. If signed into law, it could shift 4 seats currently held by Democrats into Republican-leaning territory, changing the state's delegation from a 20-8 Republican advantage to 24-4. The map now heads to the state Senate, which is expected to vote on it this afternoon. We have analysis on the rate set today by the Federal Reserve and Fed Chair Jerome Powell's announcement of what he's doing next after this break. Stay tuned.
I'm Jonathan Lawson. If you're 50 to 85, please listen closely. The lock I want to talk to you about isn't the one on your door. It's a rate lock for your life insurance that guarantees that once you're insured, your rate can never go up at any time for any reason. Many policies you see don't have one, but you can get a lifetime rate lock from Colonial Penn. This plan was designed for people on a fixed income with coverage options that start at $9.95 a month. That's less than 35 cents a day. Your rate is locked in for life. Coverage can never be canceled, and your acceptance is guaranteed. You cannot be turned down because of your health. See for yourself. Call for an information kit and gift. Both are free with no obligation.
Call 1-800-624-6556 for your free information and your free gift. That's 1-800-624-6556. 1-800-624-6556. Call now.
I trod on my glasses yesterday, and I had to pay up front for a new pair that I can't even pick up for another 10 days. So I looked for another way, and I found Select Specs. I ordered online. My new glasses just arrived this morning, and I can pay over the next few weeks. This is the way to buy glasses.
See now, pay later with Select Specs. Next day delivery and deferred payment options only at selectspecs.com.
There's a whirlwind of emotion and activity going on in this painting. And there's chaos all around and threat from below. The wolves surrounding her, and they're anything but unmoved. They're moving all the time, and we sense that. But this little girl.
President Trump's nominee, Kevin Warsh, to lead the Federal Reserve has cleared a first hurdle today. The Senate Banking Committee voting to advance Warsh's nomination, sending it to the full Senate for a final confirmation vote. Warsh, a former Fed governor and Trump economic advisor, is expected to face a partisan battle on the floor. A confirmation vote could come as early as next week. Markets are watching closely as next Fed chair will shape interest rates policy for years to come. And breaking news from the Federal Reserve, policymakers are holding interest rates steady for the third straight meeting. This is Jerome Powell's final meeting as Fed chair. Here he is making the announcement.
The U.S. economy has been expanding at a solid pace. While job gains have remained low, the unemployment rate has been little changed in recent months. Inflation has moved up and is elevated, in part reflecting the recent increase in global energy prices. Today, the FOMC decided to leave our policy rate unchanged. We see the current stance of monetary policy as appropriate to promote progress toward our maximum employment and 2% inflation goals.
The central bank kept rates steady at 3.5 to 3.75% in an 8-4 vote. The decision was widely expected. In terms of Powell himself, his term as chair expires on May 15th. He said at the press conference that he plans to stay on as Fed governor for some time and says he plans to, quote, keep a low profile. And as we mentioned earlier, new chair nominee, Fed chair nominee Kevin Warsh's confirmation could happen pretty soon. There have been concerns about potential conflicts from having a former chair serving alongside a new chair. And now for analysis on the Fed's decision today, we're bringing on Stephen Cates, financial analyst at Bankrate. So Stephen, welcome. Thank you for joining us today. So can you just walk us through today's decision? Yeah, good afternoon. Walk us through in plain language here, what went to the Fed's decision today in holding rates steady?
So this was widely expected, first of all, so it's not really a surprise. But the main factors here are the fact that inflation was stubborn before the Iran conflict. The spike in oil prices has only exacerbated price increases that are hitting consumers right at the gas pump and feeding into the economy elsewhere. It's just not a circumstance where the Federal Reserve can cut interest rates, in the face of rising inflation.
Okay, so but the Federal Reserve focuses on core inflation, and that excludes energy prices. So how is the Iran war factoring into the Fed's calculus, if it's changing it at all?
Well, when you think about the fact that diesel prices certainly impacted quite heavily by the Iran conflict because of the spike in oil prices, those are one of the major factors for shippers all around the country. So when shipping costs go up, then goods prices go up. And this is something that the Federal Reserve simply can't ignore. Yes, that they do like to focus on core personal consumption expenditures or other measures that may incorporate an exclusion of volatile food or energy prices. But the fact that gas prices rose by the largest month-over-month increase that the BLS has ever had since they started tracking this data back in the 60s, it's not really something that they can overlook. And the length of the conflict is certainly unknown. The downstream impacts that this could have on the economy, still unknown. It's just not a position where they can start to cut in the face of what is rising inflation. It's just something that would risk their credibility, given the fact that it's been 5 years since we have actually had below target 2% inflation.
Okay, so of course I'm not an expert on this, so maybe you can help me understand the situation. So the rising gas prices, that is not due to demand, and the Fed's toolbox mainly focuses on demand. So, I mean, is it trying to change the administration's policies to change the administration's policies through Fed policy?
Well, what the Fed doesn't want to do is exacerbate this. Really, we have consistent demand across the economy. I think that's one of the reasons that prior to the conflict, we had rising consumption expenditures. We had rising inflation in both goods and services. That was in both January and February. So you can exclude the Iran conflict if you'd like to, but inflation was still heading towards 3%, going upwards in the wrong direction, far before this conflict took place. And it's not just oil that is a concern. Other issues are certainly going to impact the global economy. And that feeds into the U.S. We're simply not an isolated country, even as much as we'd like to be. So the Fed has to take into account the fact that job and the labor market, those have improved slightly. They're no longer deteriorating at the rate that they expected that they might be about 6 months ago. Inflation has to be the focus. Again, it's been 5 years since we were at target. If they don't show some backbone to fight inflation, they're going to lose all credibility.
Okay, so if we zoom out and look at the curve, inflation from its peak to now, if you zoom out really far away, it's been on a downward trajectory. So can you just talk to us about what forces right now are pushing up inflation and what are the forces pushing down inflation and which side is stronger right now?
Yeah, so we are certainly lower in terms of annual inflation compared to where we were in 2022. 6, 7, 8% annual inflation. That is what people remember from the 2022, 2023 timeframe. And obviously that was extremely scary. That's not something we want to repeat. But inflation has been rising now since about April of last year. The slow trickle of tariff impact has been steady. It hasn't been as acute as this Iran conflict has been in terms of the impact on oil and gas and other items that are priced and shipped through the Strait of Hormuz. But the impact has been real, and it's certainly shown up in pushing us from about 2.5% personal consumption expenditures up to closer to 3%. That is the wrong trajectory. So yes, we're lower than we were in 2022, but we're heading in the wrong direction and have been now for months. What is moving the needle here is primarily goods inflation. A lot of times goods inflation is neutral at zero or negative under normal circumstances. It is increasing at a positive rate below 2%, but that added contribution of something that's usually actually deflation or negative inflation, that is helping to push inflation, the overall average, up higher.
Okay, what are your thoughts on whether it's likely or unlikely, given what you said about the past few months, inflation inching up, that there's going to be rate hikes in the future?
I think it's actually pretty unlikely. Both cuts and hikes are, I think, for all of 2026, probably off the table. Either one of those, given the circumstances that we're in, is probably going to look a little bit panicky by the Federal Reserve. And I think that they would ideally like to stay exactly where they are for as long as possible under this kind of headwinds that we have in the economy. Now, if data improves, I'll be the first one to say that I hope that they do start cutting, because that's going to ease things. That's going to ease rates for borrowers who really need it. We got to get this, the home market, the housing market in this country going again, because it's been depressed for years now. So hopefully we do get in this position where borrowing rates can come down. But until we get to a position where inflation is meaningfully falling over multiple months, any kind of a cut is going to look like an emergency cut. Any kind of a hike is going to spook the stock market and send that grossly lower. Okay,
so what data points are you looking at to get a sense whether inflation is coming down or not? Are you mainly looking at the CPI? What is it?
Yeah, so CPI and PCE are going to be two of the major measures. Now, Kevin Warsh, the incoming Fed chair, he's talked about other alternative measurements. Trimmed mean was one of those. That's not looked at quite as closely, but it is tracked by numerous regional Fed banks, like the Dallas Fed, for instance. That does show a much sunnier version of what inflation looks like. And that's one of the reasons that he certainly called it out. But there's a little bit of a danger in looking at alternative measures simply because they may look good today, but they may also not look good for past circumstances. That trimmed mean, while it looks really nice today, was very slow to respond to the inflation back in 2022. Had the Fed followed the trimmed mean instead of following CPI or PCE, they would have reacted even slower to the increase in inflation back in 2022, and things would have been much worse off.
Okay, so you bring up Kevin Warsh, and Jerome Powell also congratulated him today in his press briefing about his advancement in the confirmation process. So can you just talk to us a little bit about your understanding of Kevin Warsh? What is he going to bring to the table as the Fed chair of the central bank? Are we likely to see more rate cuts with him at the head?
Well, he's certainly going to be biased towards rate cuts, and he's talked about that openly. I don't think that's a surprise to anybody. But he's still one voting member on the committee. He's not going to be able to necessarily muscle all the committee members towards rate cuts. It's something that he's going to have to build a consensus for. That's one thing that Jerome Powell was very good at, was trying to bring everybody together to a certain level of thinking. And even for him, in the last 6 months or so, we've had multiple dissents to what the committee has actually pulled forward. And Kevin Warsh is likely to have a similar situation where he may not get a unanimous decision every time. He probably will be unlikely to. But over time, he may be able to bring the committee towards his line of thinking, both in terms of interest rate policy, both in terms of communication standards, which he believes should be pulled back, and also bringing the Fed back towards more of its core monetary policy work, as opposed to working on projects that might be viewed more at the margins.
Okay, so Stephen, like I said earlier, I'm not very much an expert on this, but how much influence or leverage does the Fed chair have in the Federal Open Market Committee, FOMC, in deciding rate cuts? For example, if Warsh wants a rate cut, the other members don't, how much power does he have in changing people's minds?
Well, as chair, he'll certainly have some deference from the committee. But again, he's simply one of many who are going to be voting. And if he is the only one that is voting for a rate cut against everyone else, I don't think that the committee members are going to go along to get along. maybe he'd be able to rally some support from certain members. But if people are steadfastly against his position and have a data-driven reason for that, I don't think he's going to be able to change those minds. He's going to have to produce hard data on why his way, whether it's alternative or not, is going to be better. And that may take some time to gain the trust of his colleagues. So it's not that he's doing something that is, wholly out of left field or certainly not wrong or anything. He has some simply alternative views. And if he can convince everybody that those views hold water, are correct, and are warranted, then he's going to earn the trust of the committee. He's certainly going to get the committee members, colleagues, to go along with that. But he's going to have to stand on hard data and firm economic policy.
Okay, I don't want to take up too much of your time, but just two more quick comments here. Jerome Powell said he's going to stay on the board of the Fed after he steps down as governor. You have any comments on that?
I'm very surprised. I didn't expect him, one, to stay on, and two, to announce it during this meeting. In some of my comments ahead of the meeting, I had said that I thought it was unrealistic that he would address that at all. And he came right out and said it right in the beginning. So I was very surprised that he did that. I think that it demonstrates, his belief that the Fed independence requires him to continue to serve. He has a legal right to do so as a governor. His term can go through January 2028. How long he'll stay on, unknown. Will it be for the full term? Will it be for some portion of it? We don't know. But, as he said, he will stay on until he feels like the investigations and the challenges to the Fed's independence are well and truly over. That's open-ended, and so we're going to have to wait and see what happens.
All right, just finally, what does today's decision mean for consumers?
Honestly, very little. I don't think too many people are going to be watching the Fed decision to decide how they're going to react or make their spending decisions. For borrowers, this doesn't provide much relief. Lower Fed funds rate would impact lower credit card rates, lower home equity lines of credit rates, lower auto loans. That would be a benefit for a lot of consumers, and I think people are desperate to try to see lower borrowing rates. For savers, this leaves them with an interest rate on their high yield savings accounts and CDs and other products that is still much, much higher than it was pre-pandemic. So for savers, this is great. But for borrowers, it's not so good.
Well, all right, Stephen, really appreciate your time. Thank you for your comments today. Pleasure talking to you.
My pleasure.
Violent storms tearing across the heartland, a tornado flattening parts of North Texas, massive hail smashing through the Midwest, and wildfires still burning in the South. The latest from the storm zone after this break. Stay tuned.
I'm Amy Grant, and I want to talk to you from my heart about the heart. I would have been the last person on the list to say this woman has a problem with her heart. So no, there was nothing about my life that said, you have a ticking time bomb in your chest. But I did. I wound up in the office of a cardiologist because I was there with my husband. And at the tail end of that, the cardiologist looked at me and said, I want to see you. No one was more surprised than I was to learn I was living with a rare heart condition. He said, Amy, this condition, you'll be fine, and then catastrophic. A few months later, I had open heart surgery that saved my life. And I owe it to the research and life-saving medical breakthroughs developed by the American Heart Association. That's why I'm asking you to join me and become a monthly donor to the American Heart Association. Please call now or go to helpheart.org. For only $19 a month, just 63 cents a day, you can help fund the next medical breakthrough, get the next person trained in CPR, and get the next hospital certified in high-quality cardiovascular care. If this could happen to me, it could happen to anybody. Heart disease is America's #1 killer, but your support can save your life or the life of someone you love. Give $19 a month with your credit card, and we'll send you this special t-shirt you can wear to show you're part of a community of monthly donors working to help save more lives like mine. I'm grateful for the American Heart Association. Their research gave me more time to do the things I love with the people I love. So listen to your heart. I'm here today because I did. Please call the number on your screen or go to helpheart.org now to become a monthly donor and help save even more lives. Thank you.
I'm Jonathan Lawson. If you're 50 to 85, please listen closely. The lock I want to talk to you about isn't the one on your door. It's a rate lock for your life insurance that guarantees that once you're insured, your rate can never go up at any time for any reason. Many policies you see don't have one, but you can get a lifetime rate lock from Colonial Penn. This plan was designed for people on a fixed income with coverage options that start at $9.95 a month. That's less than 35 cents a day. Your rate is locked in for life. Coverage can never be canceled, and your acceptance is guaranteed. You cannot be turned down because of your health. See for yourself. Call for an information kit and gift. Both are free with no obligation.
Call 1-800-514-7779 for your free information and your free gift. That's 1-800-514-7779. 1-800-514-7779. Call now.
Cleanup is underway in North Texas after violent weather hammered broad swaths of the U.S. heartland. Here's an update.
Currently, the Palapena County judge and the Parker County judge are both working on declaring the area a disaster.
Authorities in Mineral Wells, Texas, addressing the damage left by a tornado that flattened parts of the town.
Y'all pray for everybody in Mineral Wells, Texas, guys. It's crazy out here right now.
Several people were injured, 2 of them hospitalized when the tornado ripped through the town about 80 miles west of Dallas Tuesday, the 6th day of a severe storm outbreak that has terrorized the Midwest and continues to wreak havoc in the South. The violent storms Tuesday also came with hail. Hailstones up to tennis ball and baseball size pummeled Springfield, Missouri, damaging vehicles and knocking down power poles.
I gotta get out of here.
A storm chaser in Missouri reacting as the icy chunks rained down on his car, cracking his windshield. In neighboring Illinois, authorities are assessing damage from a tornado Monday that ripped through several towns in Clinton County, including Germantown. The storm damaged homes, toppled trees and power lines, and blocked roads. Meanwhile, wildfires continue to burn in parts of the South, including South Florida, where a massive blaze is burning in Everglades National Park. As of Tuesday night, it had expanded to more than 5,000 acres.
A new kind of aircraft is flying over New York City this week, one that developers say could reshape how people travel across the region. NTD's Nikubani has more.
Joby Aviation is conducting electric air taxi test flights in New York City this week. The flights are part of a federal push to introduce eVTOL aircraft, electric vehicles that take off vertically like helicopters but fly like airplanes.
So we have a problem with traffic sitting on the streets. And so we need to figure out, are we going to go underground or are we going to go up in the sky?
The aircraft uses 6 electric propellers, each with a backup motor. It lifts off vertically, then tilts forward once airborne, reaching speeds of up to 200 miles per hour, cutting what's normally an hour-long trip in New York City to about 10 minutes. But questions remain about cost, safety, and accessibility.
For vertical aerospace, they are certifying to what's called 10 to the minus 9. So that basically means that there's a chance of catastrophic failure 1 in 1 billion flights. So I think setting the bar really, really high in that standard is what's going to differentiate.
Joby Aviation says the aircraft is expected to be about 100 times quieter than a regular helicopter and cost roughly the price of a premium car service.
If pricing truly is the same rate as Uber Black, it may be feasible for many New Yorkers. However, that may be a promotional rate at this point.
Joby says the aircraft can carry up to 4 passengers and their luggage, and says it will work with firms like Uber to make the service easy to access.
I think in a few years, it will be a realistic option for people to get to the airport. Of course, it's only traveling to the helipads at this point. So unless you live near a helipad, you still have to get home from that helipad.
Now, if you're in New York City this week, you may catch one of these aircrafts in the sky. However, before they become a regular sighting, they will still need approval from the FAA. Nikubani, NTD News, New York.
The Supreme Court justices today reviewing a case that could allow the Trump administration to send thousands of immigrants back to their home countries. Arlene Richards has the latest from Washington. after this.
Amazing grace, how sweet the sound that saved a wretch like me. I once was lost, but now I'm found. Was blind, but now I see.
They're just young people, hungry, homeless, and vulnerable. Abused youth often feel safer on the street. Now, more than ever, that's the most dangerous place of all. Covenant House is helping young adults facing homelessness. We're providing safe shelter to thousands, but the need is overwhelming, and no young person is ever turned away. Please call or go online now with your gift of $19 a month to help a young person. You'll provide safe shelter, hot meals, and medical care. Your gift will show them they're loved. Homeless young people are afraid and alone with nowhere else to turn.
You want to know that there's somewhere you can go that's safe. So the Covenant House did that for us.
Please call now with your gift of $19 a month. We'll send you this blanket as a reminder of the comfort your gift provides a young person tonight. Please don't wait. Your gift is the lifeline a young person needs now. Call the number on your screen or go online to safeplacetosleep.org. Thank you for saving precious lives.
In 4 days. There was an old woman who lived in a shoe. She had so many children. She didn't know what to do.
Did you have a good day at school?
She gave them some broth without any bread.
There you go.
And kissed them all soundly.
Night night.
Good night. And put them to bed. Hunger is a story we can end. End it at feedingamerica.org.
Welcome to NTD Newsroom. I'm Don Ma. President Trump urging Iran to reach a deal to end the conflict with the U.S., how the administration's putting economic pressure on the regime, and what the U.S. military may be planning to break the negotiation deadlock. The Supreme Court justices today reviewing a case that could allow the Trump administration to send thousands of immigrants back to their home countries. Arlene Richards has the latest from Washington. A Southwest flight attendant was awarded nearly $1 million after courts ruled that both the airline and the Transportation Workers Union illegally fired her for expressing religious and personal beliefs. And in another Supreme Court development today, a unanimous ruling released in favor of faith-based pregnancy centers. The justices say they can challenge a New Jersey subpoena in federal court, citing First Amendment concerns. And turning to media and regulation, the FCC ordering an early review of licensed renewals for Disney's ABC stations in major cities. The move comes amid an ongoing investigation and a broader dispute involving the Trump administration. Interest rates are remaining the same following an announcement from Fed Chair Jerome Powell, and President Trump's Fed Chair nominee will have a final confirmation vote in the Senate, Jason Blair reports. Violent storms tearing across the heartland, a tornado flattening parts of North Texas, massive hail smashing through the Midwest, and wildfire still burning in the South, the latest from the storm zone.
This is NTD Newsroom, live from our global headquarters in New York City.
Thank you for joining us. President Trump issuing a new warning to Iran, urging the regime to make a deal. It comes as the president refuses to lift the U.S.'s naval blockade on Iranian ports. NTD's White House correspondent Mariotu has more.
And this is coming as President Trump is reiterating, doubling down, that the Iranian regime can never have a nuclear weapon. And he's saying that the U.S. is currently in telephone talks with the Iranian regime and that a new potential wave of strikes on Iran depends on how those talks go. Now, this comes as the president today took to Truth Social to say, quote, Iran can't get their act together. They don't know how to sign a non-nuclear deal. They better get smart soon. And Don, that post coming along with an edited image of President Trump holding a machine gun with explosions in the background. Here's the president in the Oval just moments ago. Take a look.
Look, we're not going to let Iran have a nuclear weapon. And we've knocked out their Navy, we've knocked out their Air Force, we've knocked out their anti-aircraft, everything, apparatus, everything they have, their radar. They have very little left. And they have some missiles, a small percentage. They have a small percentage of missile-making facilities. We knocked out about 80% of them. The rest could come very quickly if we don't make a deal. They're not going to have a nuclear weapon. They know it, and just about everybody else does.
And Don, President Trump is also calling the U.S.'s blockade on Iranian ports in the Hormuz Strait, quote, 100% foolproof and genius. This is coming a day after President Trump said on Truth Social, quote, Iran has just informed us that they are in a, quote, state of collapse. They want us to open the Hormuz Strait as soon as possible as they try to figure out their leadership situation, which I believe they will be able to do. The president today saying that he's rejecting that request from the Iranian regime, and he's going to keep Iran under that naval blockade until the regime agrees to a deal that addresses their nuclear program. He also says Iran's economy is crashing, citing both high inflation and a meaningless, valueless currency there. And Don, that blockade extension is coming as experts estimate that Iran has at most 12 to 22 days left of oil storage, as Tehran has nowhere to put their crude under this blockade of the U.S.'s.
So, Mari, can we talk about the White House Correspondents' Dinner shooting? The Department of Justice today filing court papers requesting the suspect remain in jail pending trial. What is the latest on that?
Sure. So some key updates from that new court file today. The Department of Justice saying that that suspect, Cole Allen, could face life in prison without parole if he was convicted. The Department of Justice is also releasing a previously unseen photo of the suspect at the Washington Hilton. It's a mirror selfie that you see there in his hotel room where you can see his weapons. The Department of Justice also asking for that suspect, Allen, to remain detained pending trial, saying, quote, the defendant's actions were premeditated, violent, and calculated to cause death. Don, back to you.
Okay, Mari, thank you. President Trump keeps the naval blockade on Iranian ports as the Islamic regime doesn't want to give up its nuclear aspirations. NTD's international correspondent Arian Pazdar has the latest on the negotiations.
New footage on Wednesday shows the Strait of Hormuz remains largely empty. The U.S. is blocking ships with ties to Iran after the Islamic regime laid mines trying to prohibit anyone from passing the strait.
Ineffective.
On Wednesday, President Trump posted, Iran can't get their act together. They don't know how to sign a non-nuclear deal. They better get smart soon. Due to the American blockade on Iranian ports, the regime can't export its oil anymore, while its storage sites are at limit. The Department of War on Wednesday saying Tehran is using retired ships to keep loading oil as its storage space runs out, saying this shows that the American blockade is working. If Iran can't store its oil, it'll have to shut the oil wells, which can cause permanent damage to the oil fields. And the U.S. Central Command releasing a video of American forces boarding yet another vessel with ties to Iran. CENTCOM says the commercial ship is suspected of attempting to transit to Iran in violation of the U.S. blockade. So far, U.S. forces have redirected 39 vessels near the Strait of Hormuz. CENTCOM also reports that 20 vessels are now anchored at a port in southern Iran. Before the American blockade, only 5 commercial ships were anchored there. Arian Pazdar, NTD News.
The Treasury has frozen $344 million in cryptocurrency linked to Iran. The move is part of the Trump administration's effort to squeeze the Iranian regime's finances. The Treasury has taken several steps to cut revenue for Iran as part of a maximum pressure campaign dubbed Operation Economic Fury. In a post on X, Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent said the effort will, quote, continue to systematically degrade Tehran's ability to generate, move, and repatriate funds. Other targets of Operation Economic Fury include Iran's international shadow banking system, its fleet of sanction-evading oil tankers, and weapons procurement networks. Bessent said the effort is draining funds for Tehran's terrorist proxies in the region while also targeting so-called Chinese teapot refineries that support Iran's oil trade. Secretary of War Pete Hegseth testifying today before the House Armed Services Committee. The hearing marks the first time the War Secretary has answered questions from lawmakers since the U.S. launched Operation Epic Fury in late February.
This war of choice is a political and economic disaster at every level. Despite the president's promise to lower the cost of living, gas prices are up 40% and inflation is soaring, so much for lowering the cost of living. The president has got himself and America stuck in the quagmire of another war in the Middle East. He's desperately trying to extricate himself from his own mistakes.
Shame on you. Calling this a quagmire 2 months in. The effort, what they've undertaken, what they've succeeded, the success on the battlefield that could create strategic opportunities, the courage of a president to confront a nuclear Iran, and you call it a quagmire, handing propaganda to our enemies. Shame on you for that statement. And statements like that are reckless to our troops. Don't say I support the troops on one hand, and then a 2-month mission is a quagmire. That's a false equivalation. Who are you cheering for here?
According to the Pentagon, the war in Iran has cost $25 billion so far. Democrat lawmakers questioned Hegseth about the growing price tag for the conflict. California Representative Ro Khanna pressed Hegseth on the war's financial impact on Americans.
Do you know how much it will cost Americans in terms of their increased cost in gas and food over the next year because of the Iran war?
I would simply ask you what the cost is of an Iranian nuclear bomb.
I'm going to give you that opportunity.
I would simply ask you what the... you're playing gotcha questions about domestic things. I'm not...
You're saying it's a gotcha question to ask what it's going to be in terms of the increased cost of gas.
Why won't you answer what it costs to prevent Iran from getting a nuclear bomb?
I give you that, sir, but let me...
What would it cost? What would you pay to ensure Iran doesn't get a nuclear bomb?
Hegseth's testimony comes as Iran continues to restrict shipping traffic through the Strait of Hormuz. The U.S. has responded by imposing a naval blockade on Iranian ports. Iran has threatened to take military action if the blockade continues. President Trump has said that any peace deal with Iran would require the regime to abandon its nuclear weapons program. Southwest Airlines flight attendant Charlene Carter has received almost $1 million in damages in her federal case against both Southwest and the Transport Workers Union. In a nearly decade-long case, Carter charged that both the union and the airline had violated her rights by terminating her from her position for expressing her personal and religious beliefs. In private communications, Carter had criticized the Transport Workers Union for a host of divisive political positions. A battle that began in 2017 in the Northern District Court of Texas recently ended at the Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals. Carter said, quote, "This case has been a long, hard fight, but I'll never stop sticking up for what I know is right, and I hope that both my employer and TWU bosses have learned that it doesn't pay to stifle flight attendants' freedom of religion and speech." Joining us now is Mark Mix, president of the National Right to Work Foundation. Mark, so good to have you here. Good afternoon. So your organization has provided legal representation to Charlene Carter. Can you just give us a quick overview here of what happened? What was the decision, and how was the Transport Workers Union and Southwest found to have discriminated against Carter based on her beliefs?
Yeah, Don, this is a 9-year odyssey, legal odyssey, for an individual employee who basically communicated with her union official, the people that, quote, represent her in her workplace, in a private messaging system saying she opposed what the union was doing with her money that she had to pay as a condition of employment. She couldn't have continued to work at Southwest unless she paid the Transportation Workers Union money each month for the right to work. And so when she voiced her opposition to the positions that the union was taking on matters that had nothing to do with the workplace, nothing to do with how Southwest Airlines was handling the relationship with employees, but had everything to do with politics, she objected. And when she objected, the union president went to Southwest Airlines and had her fired from her job. She did not have a single blemish in a 20-year work record with the airline, but yet because she spoke up privately to the union official, they had her fired. She obviously came to the foundation. We litigated the case down in Texas in the district court and then at the appellate court. And down, as I mentioned, it's been a 9-year legal odyssey. She finally got paid almost $1 million by the union and the airline for a violation of her rights in the workplace. And so what ended up as a long battle ended up well for Charlene Carter and hopefully spreads the word to others employees that want to speak up on issues related to their beliefs and their ideas. And the union can't thwart that. And that's what this case is all about.
Okay, so Mark, can you reiterate for us again, because I think this is important. What is the problem, or is there an inherent problem that you see with unions using its resources for political advocacy that doesn't necessarily align with members who actually are paying fees?
Yeah, absolutely. That is the injustice. The idea that the union can take away the right for you to speak for yourself in the workplace, and then to add insult to injury, they can force you to pay dues and fees as a condition of keeping your job. That's the outrage. It's unfortunately been the law since the 1930s during the Roosevelt administration, when the Congress gave unions dramatic powers over the American worker. And the idea that you're forced to give money to a private organization, i.e. a union, that will use that money for political or ideological causes that you oppose, that basically violate your morality and violate the very essence of who you are and what you believe, and then to have them be able to punish you when you say something about it is an injustice. And unfortunately, it's still the operational law under the Railway Labor Act, which covers airlines, and under the private sector labor law, which covers private sector employees, for workers who are not laboring in right to work states, where they can withhold that money if the union's using it for causes like this. It's an outrage.
And it raises the question, for me at least, if these marches or these rallies, whether they're organic or are they funded by certain groups, but that's a discussion probably for another time. But I wanted to get your reaction. You know, even though courts confirmed the transportation workers union in Southwest violated Carter's rights, you know, she's still forced to subsidize to pay the union. What is your reaction to this?
Yeah, well, she's opposed to that. Yeah, Don, that's a great point. She's flying today for Southwest Airlines, but she still has to pay union dues or fees to keep her job. It's outrageous. The fact is, though, that this case has been, you know, it was a $5 million jury award to start from the district court. And of course, we met the statutory caps on punitive and compensatory damages. Charlene's got, you know, she's got her victory. We've got our victory. And the American worker now can see that when a union tries to stop you from speaking up on issues that have nothing to do with the workplace, again, and are just, you know, you making your case known to an organization that takes your money as a condition of your employment and uses it for causes they disagree with, that there's some relief. And we're going to help workers to do that, just like we helped Charlene.
Okay, what do you hope will be the positive impacts of this case on unions, on workers' rights? What are the ripple effects and the message it sends?
Yeah, well, I think the employers across the country, including large employers like Southwest Airlines, who have a huge revenue stream, that for them, this was really nothing. One employee with courage that stood up, well, they can just say, well, no, fine, good. We got lots of other people. We can do this. But for the unions, I hope this sends a message to them that when people that they claim to represent, who oppose them for whatever reason, whether it be ideological or politically or whatever it is, when they try to speak up about this injustice, when the union tries to coerce them or intimidate them not to speak up, and in this case, ultimately had the worker fired, I hope they learn a lesson as well when they write the check. Well, Charlene's already got the check, but when they wrote the check to reimburse Charlene for the pain and for the problems they caused in her employment life.
And Mark, if you don't mind, can I ask you some broader questions about the state of unions right now while I have you here? I mean, we don't talk very much, but while I have you here, I'd like to ask, is the union's actions in this particular case against Carter part of a broader pattern of unions overall, or is this an isolated case? Are there other cases that are in the same vein?
This is absolutely not a one-off. This is happening every day in the American workplace. In fact, We just finished up with an annual board meeting this past weekend with our board came together and we talked about the work of the foundation. Don, we have 298 active cases on behalf of employees across the country in every walk of life, whether it be in a grocery store or an airline or a security guard or a truck driver. We're helping employees who have the courage to stand up and fight this vindicate their rights. And in the meantime, as we win these individual cases, getting people out of unions they never asked for, never voted for, never wanted, and we can actually broadcast this to more and more workers, and it just kind of explodes the number of calls, the number of contacts, and the number of requests we're getting for legal help across the country. So this is not a one-off. Unfortunately, it's happening every day. This is a dog bites man story as opposed to Charlene, who man bites dog when she wins one, almost $1 million in relief from a union that violated her rights.
Okay, so you're saying there's a number of cases like this or similar in some aspects. So what is the public attitude right now or trust toward unions? You know, just to talk to us about in general, how do they feel?
Yeah, well, you know, union officials like to claim that polls show that people have a generally favorable opinion of labor unions. And that question, yeah, do you have generally favorable about labor unions? A good majority of Americans say this, but when you say, are you in favor of unions forcing workers to pay dues or fees to get or keep a job? It's 80-20. People say, no way, no how should a union be able to have you fired for failure to tender dues or fees, particularly in a case like Southwest Airlines and the Transportation Workers Union against Charlene Carter, where they say, not only do you have to pay us, but you have to put it up when we do things that you oppose outside of the workplace. So it happens, unfortunately, all the time. And the way the law is written and the way the courts have decided these cases up till now, that power union officials, that privilege union officials have is still in place, particularly in the 24 states that don't have right to work laws. 26 states, this would not be allowed. Texas is a right to work state, but Southwest Airlines covered by the Railway Labor Act, which allows unions to force workers to pay dues or fees to keep their jobs. So there's more work to be done here. We'll keep doing it. And cases like this show that we can be successful defending workers across America from forced unionism.
Yeah, I really respect the work you guys are doing here. Just one final question, Mark. You know, unions are supposed to protect workers. How are they doing on that?
Yeah, well, look, if they're doing their job and they're focused on the shop floor or the workplace and they're representing the workers there, when the workers gather together, importantly said, voluntarily to amplify their voice in the workplace, the unions have a place in the American workplace. Unions have had a place and they will have a place, but there's no place for compulsion and force in this relationship. And the unions, because they can force you to pay, they don't have to pay any attention to you or your views because you either pay or you don't work. That's a wrong model. It's a bad model for the unions. And I suggest to them, if they would rely on voluntarism, actually providing services to workers they claim to represent, and do that voluntarily, they'd be a whole lot better off than using the force and compulsion of a law that we will overturn eventually. Now, we'll get it done. We'll fix it. But if they would rely on voluntarism as opposed to compulsion, they'd be a whole lot better off.
Well, all right, Mark, really enjoyed today's conversation, and thank you for protecting workers' rights.
My pleasure. Thank you for publicizing all this. This is an important part of it as well. Thank you.
Thank you. The Supreme Court justices today reviewing a case that could allow the Trump administration to send thousands of immigrants back to their home countries. More news after this break.
I'm Amy Grant, and I want to talk to you from my heart about the heart. I would have been the last person on the list to say this woman has a problem with her heart. So no, there was nothing about my life that said, you have a ticking time bomb in your chest. But I did. I wound up in the office of a cardiologist because I was there with my husband. And at the tail end of that, the cardiologist looked at me and said, I want to see you. No one was more surprised than I was to learn I was living with a rare heart condition. He said, Amy, this condition, you'll be fine, and then catastrophic. A few months later, I had open heart surgery that saved my life. And I owe it to the research and life-saving medical breakthroughs developed by the American Heart Association. That's why I'm asking you to join me and become a monthly donor to the American Heart Association. Please call now or go to helpheart.org. For only $19 a month, just 63 cents a day, you can help fund the next medical breakthrough get the next person trained in CPR, and get the next hospital certified in high-quality cardiovascular care. If this could happen to me, it could happen to anybody. Heart disease is America's #1 killer, but your support can save your life or the life of someone you love. Give $19 a month with your credit card and we'll send you this special t-shirt you can wear to show you're part of a community of monthly donors working to help save more lives like mine. I'm grateful for the American Heart Association. Their research gave me more time to do the things I love with the people I love. So listen to your heart. I'm here today because I did. Please call the number on your screen or go to helpheart.org now to become a monthly donor and help save even more lives. Thank you.
The 8th NTD International Piano Competition welcomes distinguished pianists from around the world, celebrating the depth, discipline, and expressive power of the Baroque, classical, and romantic repertoire. September 1st through the 5th, 2026, New York City. Apply at piano.ntdtv.com, honoring the timeless tradition of the piano.
At Mathis Home, we have your style in stock now during the Spring Style event. Whatever you're looking for, we have what you need for your perfect bedroom. This plush queen upholstered bed is a great example. It's a hot buy at just $5.99. From traditional to modern or anywhere in between, we can help you find the matching pieces and accessories to fit your own personal style, all at great values. Come find the look that's right for you during the Spring Style event at Mathis Home.
The Supreme Court hearing arguments today on 2 consolidated cases that question whether the Trump administration can end a program that temporarily allows several thousand Syrians and Haitians to live and work in the United States due to unsafe conditions in their home countries. The focus of the arguments today was on whether the Secretary of Homeland Security followed required steps to assess safe conditions in their countries before making a final determination, and whether the court is permitted to review the Secretary's decision. NTD's Arlene Richards was inside the courtroom today. And Arlene is joining us right now live. So there are 2 parts to the statute that applies to this case. How are the attorneys on both sides interpreting them?
Well, you're right, Don. There are 2 provisions here, and that's what the argument's mostly centered around today. One of the provisions says that you have to check the status of the country. You have to consult with one of the agencies, mostly the State Department, to see whether or not the country is safe for them to return. Another provision says that if you made a determination, if the Secretary has made the determination, then that can't be subject to judicial review. Now, the liberal justices in this case were leaning more towards the consulting and review aspect of the provision. So let's hear what their concerns were.
Your position seems to be, and you said it in your opening, any step in the process is not subject to judicial review. If the Secretary posted a notice on X saying, quote, I hereby terminate Syria's TPS program effective tomorrow, you would say that there's no judicial review of that decision, correct?
Congress has said this can be the weirdest, strangest, most arbitrary conclusion as to country conditions, and the courts still can't do anything. So point taken there. But that's a different thing than to say that all the things that the statute says that the Secretary is supposed to do in order to determine country conditions are themselves unreviewable.
Now, the conservative justices asked more questions of the other side about the judicial review aspect of this statute. And the attorney for the Syrians argued that the 2 provisions could be separated so that you could review the part of the procedure, part of the statute that talks about the procedure, this consulting and review aspect, and that the judges could make a determination based on that. So let's hear what the response was for that from Justice Amy Coney Barrett, who gave a hypothetical.
Let's imagine that there is a more robust record of consultation here, and the Secretary consults the State Department, and the State Department says the country conditions in Syria remain terrible, armed conflict continues, and, I think it would be fine and in the national interest to continue TPS status for Syrian refugees. The Secretary says, yeah, you know what, I'm going to terminate it anyway. Mm-hmm. Is that reviewable?
We could not challenge on the ground that she's wrong and the State Department is right. What the statute does is it tries to get the government to speak in one voice, which this court has said is very important, and it's a huge problem here when you have them going back and forth. But if ultimately the Secretary says, speaking in one voice is important, but my people, country conditions people, think that the armed conflict is over, so that's what we're doing, that is not reviewable.
Now, other conservative justices also asked hypotheticals about judicial review. For example, they asked whether the court should measure alleged political influence from the president, and also whether if consultation isn't adequate, what happens then. So this case was one of the last cases the judges will hear this term, and I expect that there will be a decision maybe sooner rather than later, because this is kind of an urgent appeal. So most of the cases we're expecting to come out, decisions to come out by June or July, but this one might come out sooner, maybe May, maybe later in May or June. Back to you.
Okay, Arlene, thank you for explaining it. A major ruling from the Supreme Court today. Justices ruled in favor of faith-based pregnancy centers. In a unanimous decision, the justices say the pregnancy centers can sue New Jersey in federal court. The case involves a subpoena for their records, which the justices say may violate the First Amendment right of free association. New Jersey Attorney General Matthew Platkin was one of 16 attorneys general who has criticized pro-life pregnancy centers. In 2023, Platkin issued a subpoena to First Choice Women's Resource Centers. He alleged false advertising to donors and consumers. He said the group's donor website highlighted its pro-life stance, while client sites were less explicit. First Choice denied wrongdoing, saying it does not provide or refer for abortions, which is clearly stated on its website. Lower courts blocked the federal case, saying it must first go through state court. First Choice called this a catch-22. It cited legal rules that could prevent the case from being heard again. In another ruling today, the Supreme Court limiting race-based redistricting in the Louisiana case. In a 6-3 decision, the court says race cannot be used to draw electoral district boundaries. The case focused on whether a lower court order to create a second black majority congressional district in Louisiana was constitutional. A federal district judge had ordered the state to create the second district to comply with the anti-discrimination provisions of the Federal Voting Rights Act. A group of non-black voters sued the map, arguing it discriminated against non-minorities. The ruling was authored by Justice Samuel Alito and joined by his 5 fellow conservative justices. Alito said Section 2 must enforce the Constitution's ban on intentional racial discrimination under the 15th Amendment. Now to the redistricting battle in Virginia, where the state Supreme Court has denied a request to immediately overturn a lower court ruling that blocks certification of the referendum results. The decision means the referendum outcome cannot be certified while court proceedings continue. A county judge previously ruled the measure invalid, saying the process violated Virginia's constitution. If certified, the new congressional map would shift 10 of the state's 11 districts in favor of Democrats. That's compared with the current split of 6 Democratic and 5 Republican districts. Virginia Attorney General Jay Jones asked the court to allow certification to proceed while the case moves forward. Attorneys for Republican groups argue the measure was improperly placed on the ballot and did not meet timing requirements under the state constitution. Democrats defended the process, saying it complied with legal standards and should stand. The Florida House this morning approved the governor's proposed congressional map in an 83-28 vote. If signed into law, it could shift 4 seats currently held by Democrats into Republican-leaning territory, changing the state's delegation from a 20-8 Republican advantage to 24-4. The map now heads to the state Senate, which is expected to vote on it this afternoon. Federal Reserve Chair Jerome Powell announces no changes to interest rates. This while President Trump's nominee to replace Powell advances in the Senate. NTD correspondent Jason Blair reports.
Today, the FOMC decided to leave our policy rate unchanged.
The Federal Reserve holds interest rates unchanged at 3.5 to 3.7% for the third consecutive policy meeting.
We see the current stance of monetary policy as appropriate to promote progress toward our maximum employment and 2% inflation goals. Developments in the Middle East are contributing to a high level of uncertainty about the economic outlook, and we will remain attentive to risks to both sides of our dual mandate.
This could be Federal Reserve Chair Jerome Powell's last big meeting in his current position. Powell's term expires on May 15th, and President Trump's Fed Chair nominee Kevin Warsh is gaining ground in the Senate. The Senate Banking Committee on Wednesday voting 13-11 to advance Warsh. This means that his nomination will head next to a full Senate vote, which will ultimately determine whether he becomes the new Fed chair.
Kevin Warsh's leadership is absolutely essential now at the Federal Reserve than ever before.
Members of this committee who vote for Mr. Warsh and help facilitate President Trump's takeover of the central bank will come to regret it.
If confirmed, Warsh would go on to replace Powell. Last week, U.S. Attorney Jeanine Pirro announced an end to a federal investigation into Powell and his handling of central bank renovations, referring the matter to the Inspector General. Pirro also added, quote, "I will not hesitate to restart a criminal investigation should the facts warrant doing so." A day after, Trump also said that another investigation is not out of the question.
You know, it's not dropped. They're looking into the whole thing about the cost. What I want to look at is how can a building that I could have done for $25 million cost $4 billion? That's a big thing, and he was in charge.
Jason Blair, NTD News.
Acting Attorney General Todd Blanche and the acting director of the ATF have announced new gun regulations. They say the updated policies are focusing on protecting Americans' Second Amendment rights.
In today's package, you will see 34 clear, common-sense regulations that rescind, modernize, or clarify language within the National Firearms Act, the Gun Control Act, and more. We are proposing to remove unnecessary hurdles that were standing in the way of law-abiding citizens and businesses. We are proposing to restore clarity and predictability in our standards. We are beginning responsive to court orders that our constituents needed for clear, decisive instruction so action can be taken to rescind what didn't work.
Acting Attorney General Todd Blanche also weighed in on the reforms. Blanche said the Justice Department was ending what he called the weaponization of federal authority against law-abiding gun owners. The acting Attorney General added that his department would continue to defend Americans' Second Amendment rights. And a major case before the Supreme Court on whether U.S. companies can be held liable for human rights abuses overseas. We have more on that after this break. Stay tuned.
Tired of struggling with that heavy leaf blower? Introducing the Bullseye Power Blower. It delivers a massive blowing force, and yet it's so compact and lightweight. Just lock and load the rechargeable battery for long-lasting runtime. The secret is the compact turbocharged motor with jet burst technology that blasts out 21,000 RPMs of airflow. Watch this. The sheer force propels this woman across the pool. Look, use Bullseye to blow up a huge jump house. Now that's power. Even blows snow right off your vehicle in no time. Turbo clean your porch in a flash or tidy up your dirty garage floor in seconds. Get it today for just $99.99. But wait, act now and get a $20 discount. So it's only $79.99. Plus, you'll get the adjustable extension tube. Yours free. And it all comes with free shipping. Order now.
Call 1-800-209-2313 or go to bullseyeblower.com. That's 1-800-209-2313 or order online at bullseyeblower.com. Order now.
Is deep-sea fish oil really healthy? Due to pollution in the oceans, most fish contain heavy metal elements and radioactive substances. That's why it's so important to choose a pure source of omega-3. Puritan Green Vegetable Omega-3 is made from purslane and perilla seeds, which are rich in nutrients and minerals. It effectively improves brain power and is beneficial to the heart's health. Puritan Green Vegetable Omega-3. Eat 2 a day and you'll feel brand new.
I trod on my glasses yesterday, and I had to pay up front for a new pair that I can't even pick up for another 10 days. So I looked for another way. And I found Select Specs. I ordered online. My new glasses just arrived this morning, and I can pay over the next few weeks. This is the way to buy glasses.
See now, pay later with Select Specs. Next day delivery and deferred payment options only at selectspecs.com.
I am so glad you ladies are here. You each have your own rooms. Thank you. Get settled in. I'll call you for dinner. Adopting twin sisters, it's a lot. Girls, you're gonna be late. You want breakfast? No thanks, we're good. They're always in their own world. What'd you get there? Twice the work. Twice the surprises. Just try it. Good. But if you think of it that way, they're also twice as fulfilling. I think you should ask her yourself.
Is it okay to call you Mom?
Of course you can.
An American company may be complicit in human rights violations in China. Here's an attorney explaining the case to the Supreme Court yesterday.
Each of the plaintiffs were tortured or killed by Chinese authorities because of their religious beliefs. Cisco provided substantial assistance to this persecution from U.S. territory by providing a customized surveillance system designed to identify Falun Gong believers to Chinese authorities for detention and forced conversion through torture and other barbaric treatment.
The case before the Supreme Court yesterday centered on whether U.S. companies can be held responsible for assisting human rights abuses committed by foreign governments. To break down this case, NTD's Jack Bradley spoke with Jan Jekielek, senior editor of the Epoch Times and a New York Times bestselling author. Take a look.
Jan Jekielek, thanks so much for joining us here.
Great to be here, Jack.
Now, the Supreme Court just heard arguments on whether Cisco assisted the Chinese Communist Party in its torture and killings of Falun Gong practitioners. Here's Justice Sotomayor describing what happened, followed by the attorney for the practitioners.
The allegation is that Cisco, knowing that China was going to torture Falun Gong adherents, actually promoted sales of its technology, not only by telling them that it could do it if they bought this technology, but custom making it, as it bragged to the Senate, so that it could identify 90% of such adherents.
Cisco subjected Falun Gong believers to torture and extrajudicial killing by identifying them and delivering them to their torturers.
Now, Jan, describe for us how significant this case is.
Well, obviously, incredibly significant. I mean, the big question at play, there's multiple questions at play, right? One of them is simply, can and should American companies be held civilly liable under this Alien Tort Statute or Torture Victims Protection Act statute for activity they've done outside of America, right? So that's kind of a general question. I know the conservative justices don't necessarily like this particular statute because it could put American companies, make them subject to abuse, right, by kind of frivolous lawsuits and so forth. The other side of it, however, is that, looking at some of the research materials that are involved in this case, it really does look, the allegation is that Cisco marketed itself to the Chinese Communist Party, knowing full well what its technology would be used for surveilling people, identifying them, and basically, and that information being used to persecute them. There's a kind of an extreme persecution of the strategy that the Chinese Communist Party was in the process of enacting when, Cisco representatives kind of sold the idea to the regime and built this, golden shield mass surveillance system. I mean, this is kind of the prototype, which then the Chinese regime has expanded dramatically.
I want to get into the aspects of this persecution itself. It's one of the biggest ongoing persecutions in the world. Describe for us the scope and scale of this.
In 1999, the Chinese regime estimated there were 70 to 100 million Falun Gong adherents. Okay, this is a practice based on truthfulness, compassion, forbearance. For those that aren't familiar, slow motion exercises combined with these principles. And very, very grassroots in form. It doesn't have a hierarchy or worship. It basically kind of spreads by word of mouth. And indeed, it spread from a relatively small number of people doing it in the early 90s to 70 to 100 million by their own, I think it was the sports ministry estimate. And so the regime decided to crush it at that point. And there's a bunch of theories around why. But so the effect of this, right, was that what you would call black class them, okay? And black classing is a standard modus operandi for the Chinese Communist Party. You push mass dehumanizing propaganda into a population against a particular group of people. One of the earliest was landowners, in fact, and there's been many groups over the years. Falun Gong were the newest group in 1999 that was basically vilified, the society was told that they're dangerous, they're bad people, you should turn them in, all this kind of stuff, right? So there's this mass dehumanizing propaganda was pushed into the system against them. And then when these people, against all odds, resisted, perhaps as a function of the fact that it's a very independent practice. So it wasn't something where you could just take away the leaders or something like that. There weren't really leaders. There were just a lot of people very serious about enacting this being true, good, and enduring, which is another translation. So they incarcerated, a huge number of them. And there was this unwritten rule in the system that all Falun Gong deaths will be considered suicides, which means that the purpose wasn't to kill everybody, but it was to break them, to re-educate them, to get them to renounce what they were doing, to participate in forcing others to renounce it. But the Falun Gong were unusually resilient to these kind of horrible, tried and tested coercion methods that the regime had developed.
And people are arrested for doing just that. As described in your new book, Killed to Order, you lay out the CCP's state-sanctioned forced organ harvesting, specifically targeting Falun Gong practitioners. What does this entail?
It's a crazy next level form of organ trafficking that we're talking about. Okay, by the way, my book, for those that might be interested, killedtoorder.com, that's a short link to be able to get the book. Well, it turns out they blood type, tissue type, and organ scan the Falun Gong practitioners en masse. Remember how many people were incarcerated here? We're talking in 2005, the State Department said that half of all the people in China's massive incarceration system of prisons, jails, re-education camps, labor camps, all that were Falun Gong practitioners. So they blood type, tissue type, and organ scanned them and built a database of these vitals. So now when, let's say, the transplant tourist comes along, pays their 100 or 200 grand, there doesn't need to be a catastrophic accident because that unique set of vitals is already in a database, and that person can be picked up because they're already incarcerated, an innocent prisoner of conscience, and they can be shipped and killed to order.
So Jan, Falun Gong is one of those no-go subjects for the CCP, which leverages agents and proxies abroad to suppress any information about the persecution. Describe for us the significance of this case, the Cisco case, being brought before the Supreme Court.
Well, I think I've noticed that whenever this case does come up, and it has multiple times, right, because multiple courts, including most recently the Ninth Circuit, have made rulings on this issue, right? Every time it comes up, there's an interest in it broadly in the media, which I think is very positive. Exactly to your point, right? That it's very difficult. That Epoch Times, of course, we've been covering these for the persecution of Falun Gong in multiple different groups in China that are also information around which that's also suppressed. But for a lot of the society out there, right, this is an issue that's gotten a lot less coverage than it actually deserves. So one great thing that would happen, actually that'll happen kind of irrespective in a sense, is that there will be more coverage. I would argue it would be very valuable for the world to understand, like, what's in these discovery materials? What did Cisco actually do here, right? Like, what did they propose? Is it okay to allegedly basically agree to persecute a group of people and support persecuting a group of people in order to do business with a totalitarian regime?
Jan Jekielek, thank you so much for joining us and sharing your insights with us today.
3 individuals have been indicted for allegedly assaulting a journalist earlier this month in Minnesota. The Turning Point USA contributor had been covering demonstrations against ICE outside a federal building in St. Paul. The defendants are accused of surrounding Savannah Hernandez before allegedly shoving her to the ground. Acting Attorney General Todd Blanche took to X, saying the defendants' actions did not constitute peaceful protest. Blanche posted, quote, "These deplorable actions as charged in the indictment will not be tolerated in America." Blanche continued, quote, "This Department of Justice will always punish unhinged acts of political violence." A takedown of 9 centers allegedly used for cryptocurrency fraud schemes has led the arrest of at least 276 individuals. The action is the result of cooperation between the FBI, the Dubai Police Department, and the Chinese Ministry of Public Security. Dubai police spearheaded the raids under the United Arab Emirates Ministry of the Interior. Those charged include Burmese and Indonesian nationals. 3 defendants were charged in the Southern District of California with federal wire fraud and money laundering charges. Authorities said the scam centers targeted Americans who will have suffered millions of dollars in losses from fraudulent schemes. Special Agent in Charge Mark Remley of the FBI San Diego field office said, quote, "The indictment demonstrates the FBI's determination to identify, disrupt, and dismantle these global scam centers defrauding Americans no matter where they set up shop." And the Justice Department has just charged the governor of Mexico's Sinaloa state, along with other current and former officials, accusing them of conspiring with the Sinaloa cartel, one of the world's largest drug trafficking organizations. The cartel is also designated as a terrorist organization by the U.S. government. DEA Administrator Terrence Cole says, quote, This indictment exposes a deliberate effort to undermine public institutions and put American lives at risk. The defendants allegedly used positions of trust to protect cartel operations, enabling a pipeline of deadly drugs into our country. Prosecutors say Ruben Rocha, along with the others, helped the cartel import massive amounts of narcotics into the U.S. in exchange for bribes and political support. According to the Justice Department, Rocha was elected governor in 2021 with the help of a faction of the Sinaloa cartel. In return, authorities says he promised the cartel free rein to operate and flood drugs across the border. Rocha's office says it has not officially been notified and has no comment. The others charged include current and former state-level officials, as well as the mayor of the Sinaloa cartel's capital city, which has been plagued by drug violence. This is the latest move by Washington against high-level corruption south of the border. Rising tensions with Iran as President Trump reportedly considers extending the naval blockade. What it could mean for nuclear talks and shipping in the region. We have more. And take a break right now. We'll be back.
Introducing the Quest Wise Soothing Herbal Eye Patches. It comes with 30 pairs and can be used to help combat tired and strained eyes. The natural herbal formula provides a cooling, minty, and refreshing effect that stimulates natural tears and awakens your tired eyes. Placing the eye patches around your eyes helps to reduce dryness and massages acupuncture points. They can be worn while reading, studying, using electronics, and provide hours of long-lasting relief.
This is how I keep my joints happy.
Omega XL is a powerful natural supplement backed by 40 years of clinical research. Take control of your pain, like Cynthia Bailey.
My knees in particular started giving me pain issues all the way back to my modeling days, from just running through airports, photo shoots. After taking Omega XL, I really started to notice how less stiff I was, especially my knees and my hip. Has Omega XL changed my life? Yes. I barely notice my joint pain anymore. Now I'm like literally sprinting through the airports. My secret is Omega XL.
Pick up the phone and call now to get this exclusive TV offer. Buy one Omega XL and we'll send you a second bottle absolutely free. You'll also get a free bottle of Vitamin XL D3. Buy one, get two free. A total value of over $115, all for just $49.95. You save more than 55% and shipping is free. Backed by a money-back guarantee and is not available in stores. Operators are standing by, so call now.
For decades, I've taught you everything I know. But only you can prevent wildfires.
The Federal Communications Commission has ordered an early review of license renewals for Disney's ABC television stations. The order is part of the FCC ongoing investigation into the company's compliance with FCC rules and comes amid President Trump's latest dispute with late-night host Jimmy Kimmel. Disney's ABC affiliate was directed to file license renewals for 8 licensed TV stations by May 28th. Those include major markets such as Los Angeles, San Francisco, Chicago, New York, Houston, and Philadelphia. The order speeds up renewals that otherwise would not have been required for another 2 to 5 years and could result in the stations losing the ability to broadcast over the air. A Disney spokesperson says the company has received the order and is confident they have met all license requirements. The State Department says it's preparing a limited release of commemorative U.S. passports marking the nation's 250th birthday. The design will include a picture of President Trump. Officials say he would be the first living president featured in a U.S. travel document. The concept has been under consideration for months and was approved late Monday. It includes a rendering of President Trump's image. Between 25,000 and 30,000 of the commemorative passports will be issued. They will be available at the Washington, D.C. passport office ahead of July 4th. The commemorative version will be the default there. Applicants can still request a standard passport online or outside Washington. A new kind of aircraft is flying over New York City this week, one that developers say could reshape how people travel across the region. NTD's Niku Bani has more.
Joby Aviation is conducting electric air taxi test flights in New York City this week. The flights are part of a federal push to introduce eVTOL aircraft, electric vehicles that take off vertically like helicopters but fly like airplanes.
So we have a problem with traffic sitting on the streets. And so we need to figure out, are we going to go underground or are we going to go up in the sky?
The aircraft uses 6 electric propellers, each with a backup motor. It lifts off vertically, then tilts forward once airborne, reaching speeds of up to 200 miles per hour, cutting what's normally an hour-long trip in New York City to about 10 minutes. But questions remain about cost, safety, and accessibility.
For vertical aerospace, they are certifying to what's called 10 to the minus 9. So that basically means that there's a chance of catastrophic failure 1 in 1 billion flights. So I think setting the bar really, really high in that standard is what's going to differentiate.
Joby Aviation says the aircraft is expected to be about 100 times quieter than a regular helicopter and cost roughly the price of a premium car service.
If pricing truly is the same rate as Uber Black, it may be feasible for many New Yorkers. However, that may be a promotional rate at this point.
Joby says the aircraft can carry up to 4 passengers and their luggage, and says it will work with firms like Uber to make the service easy to access.
I think in a few years, it will be a realistic option for people to get to the airport. Of course, it's only traveling to the helipads at this point. So unless you live near a helipad, you still have to get home from that helipad.
Now, if you're in New York City this week, you may catch one of these aircrafts in the sky. However, before they become a regular sighting, they will still need approval from the FAA. Nikobani, NTD News, New York.
Thank you for watching NTD Newsroom. I'm Don Ma. We're taking a quick break. We'll be back with more news. And remember to stay for NTD Evening News at 6 p.m. Eastern, 3 p.m. Pacific.